High above the clouds and deep within forgotten valleys lie places so extraordinary, so otherworldly, that they seem to exist outside the boundaries of time itself. These are not the familiar landmarks of postcards or guidebooks. They are hidden peaks cloaked in mist, ancient ranges humming with legend, and untouched landscapes where nature speaks in colors and contours too surreal to be real. In this journey, we venture into the most unreal mountain realms of our planet. Starting in the heart of China, where towering red cliffs, sacred glacier, cloud seas, and forested sanctuaries come alive with myth, biodiversity, and silent wonder. From the tropical ridges of Hainan to the snowy crowns of Sichuan, from deep gorges to sacred summits, each mountain tells a story written in stone and sky. These are not just destinations, they are living, breathing realms of beauty and mystery. So tighten your laces, steady your breath, and let the journey begin into the unreal heights of Earth's most hidden wonders. But before we continue, subscribe to the channel and like the video. Mount Nan, or Nanshan, situated in the tropical island province of Hainan, is a place where natural splendor fuses effortlessly with deep spiritual resonance. This coastal mountain stands not just as a geological feature but as a cultural and religious landmark whose atmosphere is steeped in tranquility and reverence. Rising above the lush rainforest and rolling hills that fringe the southern coast of the island, Mount Nan is part of an area renowned for its vibrant biodiversity, balmy maritime climate, and spiritual significance, especially for those drawn to the teachings of Buddhism. This isn't a craggy, snow-topped mountain like those of the Tibetan Plateau. Instead, Nanshan is drenched in humidity, warmth, and the sounds of cicadas and surf, making it entirely unique in China's catalogue of majestic peaks. One of the mountain's most iconic features is the massive Nanshan Guanyin statue, an astonishingly tall, triple-faced representation of the Bodhisattva of compassion that rises over 100 meters from the shore of the South China Sea. The statue itself stands upon a man-made island pier connected to the mainland by a broad causeway, and each of the three faces symbolizes a different aspect of Guanyin's compassion. One facing inland, another out to sea, and the third gazing toward the sky. This statue is not just a visual spectacle but a powerful spiritual beacon, drawing millions of pilgrims and tourists each year. Its construction in 2005 marked a modern continuation of China's long-standing devotion to Guanyin, bridging ancient beliefs with contemporary craftsmanship. But Mount Nan is more than just its colossal statue. The surrounding Nanshan Cultural Tourism Zone, which includes the mountain and its lower slopes, is a sprawling expanse of gardens, pavilions, temples, and traditional Chinese architecture, all designed to harmonize with the surrounding subtropical rainforest. The Nanshan Temple itself, a modern structure built in traditional Tang Dynasty style, offers visitors a serene space of reflection, its incense-laden courtyards filled with the chanting of monks and the rustling of palm fronds in the ocean breeze. Around it are intricate sculptures, manicured pathways, and a series of lesser shrines and pagodas that represent various schools of Buddhist thought. The mountain's ecological importance is also remarkable. Due to Hainan's isolation and its positioning at the convergence of land and sea ecosystems, the area surrounding Mount Nan supports a host of endemic plant and animal species. Palm trees, banyan, cycads, and ferns crowd the slopes in thick, emerald tangles, while rare birds and insects flit through the canopy. Streams and waterfalls tumble down from the higher elevations, carving their way through granite boulders and feeding into the nearby sea. On misty mornings, the mountain is wreathed in fog, its silhouette merging with the clouds, giving it an almost otherworldly ambience that perfectly complements its sacred aura. Mount Nan is also a place of cultural synthesis. Hainan, though part of China, has long had its own unique blend of influences. Indigenous Li and Miao communities, as well as Han Chinese settlers, have lived side by side for generations, and the cultural motifs visible around Nanshan often incorporate this blend. Traditional crafts, local cuisine, including coconut-based dishes, tropical fruits, and seafood, and regional music performances all play a role in the broader experience of the area. Particularly during festivals, the mountain becomes alive with vibrant decorations, traditional rituals, and offerings made at the temples or along the scenic coastal promenades. The juxtaposition of a sacred mountain, tropical rainforest, and modern monumental sculpture makes Mount Nan unlike any other destination on Earth. It defies the traditional image of a mountain as a remote and icy peak. Here, it is a warm, welcoming place teeming with life, both human and natural, a sanctuary of spirit and nature alike. The scent of blooming orchids, the distant call of birds, and the rhythmic crash of waves make this mountain a sensory experience as much as a visual one. It invites not just photographers and pilgrims, but seekers, those in search of peace, reflection, and a touch of the divine nestled in a coastal paradise. Mount Batai, part of the sprawling Batang Range in western Sichuan, is not a place found on most tourist maps, but for those who reach its remote highlands, it offers a transcendent experience shaped by staggering natural beauty and an immersive encounter with Tibetan culture. Perched near the border of the Tibetan Autonomous Region and lying at the nexus of ancient trade routes and forgotten pilgrim paths, this mountainous region unfolds like a lost chapter of time. Here, the air is thin, the skies impossibly vast, and the wind carries the scent of juniper smoke and the faint echoes of centuries-old chants. The Batang Range, sometimes simply called the Batai Mountains, is a less documented offshoot of the Greater Huanggang Mountains, a series of parallel ranges that cradle deep, glacially carved valleys and rise abruptly into snow-capped peaks. Mount Batai itself and its surrounding ridges are cloaked in alpine forests at the lower elevations, which transition into grasslands and eventually barren, windswept ridgelines where ice and snow cling tenaciously even through late summer. Unlike the more famous ranges of Tibet or Yunnan, Mount Batai is rarely photographed or visited by outsiders, granting it a level of pristine authenticity that's becoming increasingly rare in the world. One of the most captivating features of the Batang Range is the ever-present network of colorful prayer flags that flutter from high passes, bridges, and rock cairns. These prayer flags, known as lungta in Tibetan, literally wind horse, are strung in the belief that the wind will carry their blessings across the mountains and valleys. Bright blues, reds, yellows, greens, and whites dance against the austere backdrop of grey stone and glinting snowfields. Each piece of fabric bears intricate script, mantras, sutras, and invocations, woven not just into the cloth, but into the spiritual DNA of the land. Even in silence, the mountains speak through these symbols, offering prayers to the sky, the earth, and all living things in between. The region's isolation has helped preserve the deep-rooted Tibetan cultural identity that permeates every aspect of life here. Small stone villages cling to hillsides like weathered scars of human resilience, their whitewashed walls and flat roofs reflecting the highland sun. Yaks graze in alpine meadows, their massive frames moving slowly through fields scattered with wildflowers, while local herders in thick woolen robes keep quiet watch. Life moves at a pace dictated by nature and the rituals of everyday existence, whether spinning prayer wheels, lighting butter lamps, or circumambulating local chortens, are infused with an almost sacred regularity. Mount Batai is also dotted with ancient monasteries and hermitages, often precariously perched on rock ledges or nestled in hidden valleys. Many of these monasteries are built in the traditional Tibetan style, squat and fortress-like, painted in deep reds and ochres, their interiors lined with thangka paintings, bronze statues, and the rich scent of incense. Some serve as active centers of Buddhist learning, where young monks study scripture under the tutelage of elder lamas. Others function more as spiritual retreats, their residents having taken vows of silence or solitude, seeking enlightenment through decades of reflection amidst the stark majesty of the mountains. Despite its remoteness, Mount Batai was historically part of the Tea Horse Road, a network of ancient trade routes used to ferry tea from Sichuan and Yunnan into Tibet in exchange for salt, wool, and horses. The rugged trails that cut across the region, still visible in some places, speak to centuries of cross-cultural exchange, pilgrimage, and endurance. Weathered stone paths weave through forests and gorges, crossing glacial streams via rickety wooden bridges that creak beneath every cautious footstep. These routes were once lifelines, not just for goods, but for ideas, spiritual teachings, and the transmission of Tibetan Buddhism into the heart of China. The environmental contrasts in the Batang Range are both stunning and severe. In summer, the valleys burst into bloom with golden poppies, lavender blue gentians, and a carpet of other wildflowers. The grasslands shimmer with dew in the early morning, and mountain streams reflect the amber light of dawn. But in winter, the range transforms into a white wilderness, with snow drifts swallowing trails and icy winds roaring through the high passes. It is a place of extremes, of intense isolation and intimate connection, of warmth within stone hearths and biting cold just outside wooden doors. Adding to its mystique is the fact that Mount Batai and its range have largely escaped the heavy commercialization and tourist infrastructure that has affected other mountain areas in China. There are few signs, fewer paved roads, and no gift shops or entrance gates. To reach its inner sanctums requires endurance, respect, and often, local guidance. It is a landscape that reveals itself slowly, rewarding patience with views that seem to stretch into another dimension. From certain vantage points, the horizon undulates in endless layers of mountain silhouettes, their jagged edges softened by mist and altitude. The sunrises here are not merely beautiful, they are sublime, casting golden light onto glacier and turning every snowflake into a flicker of fire. The cultural life of the mountain communities revolves not just around survival, but ceremony. Festivities like Losar, Tibetan New Year, bring together entire villages in celebrations filled with dance, music, storytelling, and elaborate offerings. On such occasions, the mountain seems to awaken in response. Drums echo across valleys, and trails once quiet are filled with the sounds of laughter and chanting. In the backdrop, Mount Batai stands silently, its presence unchanged for millennia, a guardian watching over a world that still clings tightly to its traditions, beliefs, and a rhythm of life dictated by nature, not modernity. Ultimately, what makes Mount Batai and the broader Batang Range so unreal is not just the physical splendor of the place, though that is considerable, but the seamless interweaving of human spirit, religious devotion, and raw wilderness. It is a realm where geography and belief are indistinguishable, where every stone and every gust of wind holds meaning. For those willing to venture into its highlands, the mountain offers not just vistas, but visions, of how the world once was, and of how, if we are wise, it might still be. Mount Yin, or Yinshan, unfolds like a storied ribbon through the arid expanse of Inner Mongolia, forming a natural boundary between the grassland steppes of the south and the encroaching deserts of the north. Known for its undulating ridges, wind-worn cliffs, and isolated rock outcrops, Yinshan is far more than a geological feature. It is a cradle of history, a relic of ancient empires, and a living archive etched into the landscape itself. The mountains hold within them millennia of cultural intersections, from prehistoric rock carvings to Buddhist sanctuaries hidden among its dry canyons and sunburned valleys. Stretching across central Inner Mongolia, the Yinshan Range serves as both a geographical and symbolic frontier. It marks the threshold between Han Chinese civilization to the south and the nomadic heartlands of the north, a land shaped by the rise and fall of tribes, khanates, and dynasties. The terrain itself is diverse. Low, rounded ridges give way to rugged ravines and dry riverbeds, while isolated peaks pierce the horizon like stone sentinels. Covered with sparse vegetation, shrubs, hardy grasses, and the occasional stand of twisted pine, these mountains might appear barren at first glance. But hidden within their creases lies an astonishing trove of cultural and spiritual heritage. One of the most significant aspects of Yinshan is its role as a historical corridor, linking different civilizations and ethnic groups over thousands of years. The region was once part of the northern frontier of the Chinese dynasties and the southern border of various nomadic empires, including the Xiongnu, Rouran, Turkic Khaganates, and, most famously, the Mongol Empire. These interactions left behind physical and cultural imprints, petroglyphs etched into rock faces, ruined forts, caravan trails, and watchtower foundations that trace the ancient rhythms of conquest and commerce. Perhaps the most evocative legacy of Yinshan is its rich array of petroglyphs, some of which date back over 10,000 years. These carvings depict everything from hunting scenes and ritual ceremonies to celestial symbols and early writing systems. Found primarily in areas like the Hainan Pass and nearby valleys, these rock engravings provide rare glimpses into the spiritual and daily lives of Neolithic and Bronze Age inhabitants. Anthropomorphic figures with outstretched arms, herds of deer, camels, and battle scenes, each etched with care and purpose, suggest a worldview shaped as much by myth as by survival. To stand before these carvings is to look into the minds of people who saw the mountain not as an obstacle, but as a sacred being in itself. In later centuries, with the expansion of the Silk Road and the spread of Buddhism, Yinshan took on a new spiritual dimension. Monasteries and grottos were established in secluded mountain hollows, often facing south to absorb the sun's warmth. Though many have been damaged by erosion, war, and time, their remnants still whisper of a once vibrant monastic tradition. Some temples, half buried by drifting sands, reveal stunning wall frescoes of bodhisattvas, dharma protectors, and cosmic mandalas, all faded yet persistent, like spiritual echoes trapped in stone. One such example is the Arshan temple ruins, where fragments of Buddhist art lie scattered among the rocks. High on the slopes, where the wind howls with uninterrupted intensity, ancient meditation caves can still be found, carved by monks who sought silence in the solitude of the mountains. These caves, often no larger than a few meters across, were sanctuaries of reflection and prayer. Inside, the soot marks of oil lamps linger on the ceilings, and worn niches in the walls indicate where scriptures or statues might once have rested. Yet Yinshan's sacred role predates Buddhism. Many peaks and rock formations are still considered to hold spiritual significance by local Mongol and Mungir populations. Shamanistic rituals were, and in some places still are, performed at specific stone altars or atop summits believed to house mountain spirits. Offerings of sheep bones, carved totems, and prayer scarves, known as kadag, are sometimes found fluttering from cairns or thorny branches, hinting at a continuity of reverence that stretches from antiquity into the present. The juxtaposition of desolation and sanctity is what gives Yinshan its otherworldly aura. This is a land where the elements reign supreme. Winters are brutal and dry, summers scorching, and sandstorms sweep across the plains with frightening velocity. The constant whisper of the wind, the creak of ancient branches, and the crackle of distant thunder create a symphony of natural isolation that amplifies the mountain's timeless presence. And yet, life persists here, not just flora and fauna, but human tenacity, belief, and memory. Ecologically, the range is home to hardy desert species, Argly sheep, marmots, eagles, and elusive snow leopards that traverse its quieter ridges. Pockets of stunted forests, where junipers and elms cling to survival, dot the cooler north-facing slopes. Occasionally, one might stumble upon a seasonal spring or a hidden valley carpeted in desert wildflowers after a rare rain. These transient blossoms, no less vivid for their brevity, mirror the transient civilizations that once flourished in this land, leaving behind only fragments of their stories. Modern-day visitors to Yinshan, though relatively few, come seeking both history and solitude. Archaeologists explore its hidden ruins. Pilgrims and spiritual seekers still hike to its higher altars. Photographers aim to capture the sublime juxtaposition of blue sky, red stone, and whispering wind. And scholars continue to decipher the messages left behind in stone, each symbol a letter in the long, unbroken letter of human reverence for the mountain. Mount Yin is not merely an unreal place because of how it looks, it's unreal because of what it contains. The sediment of history, the scratch marks of the sacred, and the lingering sense that beneath every rock and beyond every ridge lies a secret yet to be unearthed. It is the embodiment of the in-between, not quite desert, not quite mountain, not quite past, not quite present. A landscape shaped as much by human longing as by tectonic forces. Mount Tianqi, literally Heavenly Lake Mountain, in Xinjiang is one of those places that seems almost deliberately crafted by nature to evoke myth and wonder. Nestled deep within the Tianshan Mountains, the Heavenly Lake, Tianqihu, lies at an altitude of over 1,900 meters, cradled in a basin surrounded by snow-capped peaks that soar like silent guardians around its mirrored turquoise waters. The setting is surreal, like stepping into a celestial painting where the boundary between sky, mountain, and water dissolves in breathtaking harmony. Located approximately 100 kilometers northeast of Uremi, the capital of Xinjiang, Mount Tianqi is part of the Bogda Peak area, one of the most striking and elevated regions of the eastern Tianshan range. At the heart of this dreamlike sanctuary is Bogdafong, sacred peak in Mongolic and Turkic tongues, which towers at over 5,400 meters. This majestic summit, wrapped in glacial ice year-round, casts a spellbinding reflection in the lake's glassy surface on clear days, making it one of the most photogenic and awe-inspiring alpine scenes in all of Central Asia. The lake itself is a narrow oval of impossibly blue water that shifts hue with the time of day and the movement of the clouds. At dawn, the waters take on a violet tint, while midday brings a crystalline turquoise that seems to glow from within. In the evening, as the sun dips behind the serrated ridges of the Tianshan, the lake shimmers with molten gold and deep cobalt, the reflected mountains casting jagged silhouettes across its stillness. It's a place that demands silence, not out of reverence, but because nature speaks so loudly in color, texture, and space that words seem crude by comparison. Tianqi has long been steeped in legend and folklore. According to one of the most enduring local myths, the lake was once the celestial bathing place of the Queen Mother of the West, Zhuangmu, a powerful Taoist deity who presided over immortality and the spiritual realm. It is said that she descended from the heavens to bathe in these sacred waters, and the mountains themselves bowed in her presence, forever retaining the elegant curve that now frames the lake. Other legends speak of dragons sleeping beneath the lake's surface or spirits that guard the pass leading to Bogda Peak. Stories passed down by Kazakh herders, Hui pilgrims, and Yuga mystics who view the lake as a place of elemental power. The area around Mount Tianqi is ecologically diverse, benefiting from the dramatic vertical zonation created by its altitude and location on the edge of desert and mountain ecosystems. The lower reaches of the slopes are blanketed in spruce forests that smell of resin and pine needles, with open meadows bursting into wildflower bloom during the short alpine summer. Marmots chirp from between rocks, while golden eagles circle silently above the ridgelines. Ibex and argali, the wild mountain sheep of Central Asia, still roam these highlands. And, in the most remote corners, elusive snow leopards are known to silently prowl, though sightings are vanishingly rare. As one ascends toward the lake, the terrain shifts into a more rugged, tundra-like environment. Snowfields persist on north-facing slopes well into summer, and glacial streams cascade down from hidden meltwater channels, feeding the lake with their purity. Despite the frigid winters, the lake rarely freezes entirely due to its depth and geothermal currents beneath, adding to its mystique as a place always in motion, always alive. Visitors to Mount Tianqi often arrive via winding roads that climb steadily from the arid lowlands near Uremi. The contrast is extreme. In just a few hours, one passes from sun-baked desert plains through scrub-covered hills into alpine forests and eventually to the snow-draped serenity of the lake itself. This journey through climate zones is not just physical, it feels spiritual, like crossing thresholds into increasingly rarefied realms of air and consciousness. For many, the arrival at the lake's edge is not just a moment of arrival, but of awakening. Traditional Kazakh yurts to the surrounding valleys, particularly in summer, when nomadic herders bring their flocks to graze in the highland pastures. These pastoralists live in rhythm with the land, their songs and stories inseparable from the folds of the hills and the icy streams that crisscross the meadows. Some still speak of Tianqi with deep spiritual reverence, referring to it as a place where heaven kisses the earth, a bridge between worlds. The hospitality offered in these encampments is legendary. Guests are often welcomed with bowls of fermented mare's milk, kumis, platters of roasted lamb, and the timeless exchange of stories around open fires. Despite its isolation, Mount Tianqi has not escaped modern attention. The site has been designated a UNESCO World Heritage Location, and recent years have brought improved infrastructure and increased tourism. Yet, even with paved access roads and guided tour options, the place retains its untamed soul. Mist often rolls down from the peaks, cloaking the lake in a veil of mystery. Thunderstorms appear without warning, transforming the tranquil setting into a tempestuous scene where lightning arcs across peaks and the lake roars with sudden waves. Then, as swiftly as they came, the storms vanish, and silence returns. Cleaner, deeper, somehow more sacred than before. For artists, poets, and mystics, Mount Tianqi offers inspiration that transcends form. The symmetry of its landscape, the drama of its contrasts, and the depth of its legends all lend themselves to contemplation. It is a place that insists on perspective, not only in terms of panoramic views, but in understanding one's place within something vastly older and more profound than civilization. To gaze into its waters is to see not just one's reflection, but echoes of those who stood there before: ancient pilgrims, explorers on horseback, silent monks, and shepherds who knew the mountain's moods like the lines of their palms. In the grand mosaic of the planet's unreal places, Mount Tianqi stands apart as a site where elemental purity and ancient myth converge in stunning clarity. Its peaks are not the tallest, nor its lake the largest, but together they form a tableau so perfect, so improbable, that one cannot help but feel it was touched by something divine. And perhaps that's the essence of what makes it truly unreal. Not just the beauty, but the way it calls something out of you. A quiet yearning. A moment of stillness. A reminder that heaven is not always above us. Sometimes, it sits cradled in a valley of snow and sky, waiting. Mount Xuebao, also known as Zubaoding, rises like a silver beacon from the heart of Sichuan's Minute Mountains, its snow-encrusted peak piercing the sky with quiet majesty. At an elevation of over 5,500 meters, it is not merely a geological feature, but a sacred sentinel revered deeply by the surrounding Tibetan communities. Its name, which translates to Snow Treasure Peak, is not only fitting for its dazzling appearance but also hints at its spiritual, ecological, and cultural significance. An alpine world of mystery where glacial beauty intertwines with timeless belief. Zubaoding is the highest peak of the Minute Mountains, a rugged range that stretches across the eastern edge of the Tibetan Plateau, cutting through the borderlands of Sichuan and Gansu. The range is defined by sharp ridgelines, deep glacial valleys, and an almost feral wildness that resists human domestication. Among these serrated summits, Mount Haba stands apart not just in height but in form, its cone-like peak cloaked year-round in ice and snow, visible from great distances, particularly on clear days when it seems to glow with a quiet radiance against the cobalt sky. The mountain slopes descend into a realm of glacial cirques, alpine lakes, and craggy outcrops shaped by millennia of freezing and thawing. Small hanging glaciers cling to its flanks like frozen fingers reaching toward the forests below. These glaciers feed icy streams that cascade down to nourish the valleys, forming lifelines for an entire ecological web. In spring and summer, these meltwaters awaken high-altitude meadows into spectacular bloom. Violets, edelweiss, blue poppies, and mechanopsis carpeting the slopes like a living quilt, attracting pollinators and birds in a brief frenzy of life that fades as quickly as it arrives. The ecological significance of Mount Haba is profound. Located near the eastern edge of the Huanggang biodiversity hotspot, the mountain shelters numerous endemic species, both floral and faunal. Golden snub-nosed monkeys, tarkeens, and elusive red pandas inhabit the lower forests, while lammergeiers and Himalayan griffon vultures circle above the higher reaches. The dense coniferous forests of fir, spruce, and larch below the alpine zone serve as important refuges for wildlife, while also playing a crucial role in regulating the mountain's fragile hydrology. Every aspect of the mountain's natural makeup contributes to a finely balanced system, one that is both delicate and resilient, remote yet vital. But what truly elevates Mount Haba from extraordinary to unreal is its role in Tibetan spiritual cosmology. For the Tibetan peoples who inhabit the surrounding valleys, particularly those in Songpan County and the Aba Tibetan and Qiong Autonomous Prefecture, Zubaoding is not just a mountain, but Alha-Ri, or sacred mountain spirit. According to local beliefs, Haba is inhabited by powerful deities who govern the land, protect the people, and demand both respect and ritual. Pilgrims often journey to its base during sacred festivals, performing kora, a ritual circumambulation of the mountain's lower slopes as a means of spiritual purification and connection. Each step is an offering, each breath a prayer. Prayer flags are strung along ridge paths and rock outcrops, their faded colors testifying to the decades, sometimes centuries, of uninterrupted reverence. As the wind snaps these flags into motion, the printed mantras are believed to be released into the ether, carried to the gods. Cairns called latu, constructed of stones, branches, and symbolic items, mark sacred spots, and are added to by each traveler in a continual act of devotion. Pilgrims sometimes press their foreheads to the cold earth at certain junctures, whispering chants to unseen forces, or offering white katag scarves as symbols of respect and purity. Tibetan lamas and hermits have long sought out Zubaoding for solitary retreat, building meditation huts or using natural caves tucked into its folds to practice in silence for weeks, months, or even years. For them, the mountain is not simply a backdrop, it is a living presence, a teacher, a vessel of clarity and transcendence. The altitude, the isolation, and the constant reminder of mortality in the face of such immensity serve to strip away illusion, revealing the bare essence of being. In this way, Haba is as much an inner journey as it is a physical destination. The weather on Zubaoding is unforgiving and unpredictable. At higher elevations, sudden snowstorms can blot out the sun in minutes, while howling winds sweep across ridgelines with icy force. In winter, temperatures plunge far below freezing, and even in summer, nighttime frosts are common. Yet these harsh conditions only deepen the mountain's allure. There is something almost divine in its refusal to yield, its stark indifference to human ambition. It is the kind of place that humbles even the most seasoned alpinist, reminding all who approach that they are mere guests in a realm older and more powerful than history itself. Access to Mount Haba is limited, which has helped preserve much of its pristine character. The journey often begins from the nearby town of Songpan, a centuries-old trading post that once served as a critical node on the ancient tea-horse trade route. From there, winding roads ascend into alpine valleys flanked by prayer wheels, stone stupas, and wooden bridges carved with protective symbols. The approach to the mountain itself involves trekking through rugged terrain, pine forests, scree fields, and frozen streams, often without marked trails. There are no tourist shops, no plastic fences, no cable cars. Only the sound of boots on stone, wind through trees, and the deep, rhythmic breathing of those who have come seeking something more than just a view. When the clouds clear and Zubaoding reveals its summit in full, the effect is almost transcendent. The peak glows with a bluish hue, the snow compacted so densely it reflects light like polished crystal. Its pyramid-like symmetry, set against the endless roll of mountains beyond, evokes a kind of cosmic geometry, as if the mountain were carved by intention rather than accident. And for a fleeting moment, the viewer becomes something smaller yet more complete, absorbed into the vast stillness that only a truly sacred mountain can offer. Zubaoding is not a place one stumbles upon. It requires effort, commitment, and above all, reverence. It is unreal not simply because of its beauty, but because it reminds us that some places exist beyond the grasp of human design. Places where the earth still speaks in the old language of wind and ice, where divinity is not a metaphor but a mountain, and where the line between nature and the sacred is blurred into mist and snow. In every glacier, every echoing call of a mountain bird, every prayer flag unraveling in the breeze, Zubaoding lives, listens, and watches, timeless and untouched. Mount Altan, also known as the Altan Mountains, is a range that stretches like a spine of stone across the haunting frontier between Xinjiang and Qinghai, marking the northeastern edge of the Tibetan Plateau with silent defiance. This mountain chain, whose name translates from Turkic as Golden Mountains, is not golden in the conventional sense. It is golden in the way twilight spreads over an endless desert, in the way dust glows in the last rays of the sun, and in the hushed grandeur that surrounds a landscape older than empires and quieter than myth. It is a place where time folds inward, where maps falter, and where the wind itself seems to have forgotten the names of those who once walked its lonely trails. Stretching for over 1,000 kilometers from the Kunlun Mountains in the west to the Chilean Range in the east, the Altan forms a natural, desolate wall that separates the arid Tarim Basin from the high, frozen world of the Tibetan Plateau. These are not mountains of theatrical peaks and alpine forests. They are vast, ragged, and parched, etched with erosion, lined with the scars of geological violence, and softened only by distance. Their colors shift subtly from ochre to rust to slate, reflecting the mineral wealth buried beneath their surface and the ever-changing moods of the sky above. What makes Altan so profoundly unreal is the fusion of desolation and myth. This is a range that appears almost lunar in its barrenness, yet is steeped in spiritual resonance, with legends whispered by Yuga traders, Tibetan monks, and Kazakh herders alike. Many ancient Silk Road caravans skirted these mountains cautiously, knowing that to enter too deep into the range was to risk vanishing, swallowed not just by its harsh terrain, but by something intangible and deeply unknowable. The Altan has long been viewed as a borderland, not just geographically, but metaphysically. It forms a literal and symbolic threshold between two worlds, the vast deserts and basins of Xinjiang to the north, and the sacred, sky-touched plateaus of Tibet to the south. It is the edge of the known and the beginning of the otherworldly. This liminal nature made the range a site of great reverence among early spiritual travelers, who considered certain peaks to be dwelling places of guardian deities and elemental spirits. Local folklore tells of mountains that move in dreams, of lakes that disappear, and of travelers who walk into a canyon and never return, not due to bandits or beasts, but because the land itself does not wish to give them back. While the region is dry and seemingly lifeless, it hides pockets of unexpected biodiversity. The lower slopes of the range support populations of Tibetan wild ass, kiang, Argli sheep, and snow leopards, though their sightings are rare due to both the elusive nature of the creatures and the inhospitable environment that keeps human intrusion to a minimum. Golden eagles soar overhead, their shadows flickering across gravel ridges, and even in the harshest zones, lichen and alpine flowers cling to existence in rock cracks and wind-sheltered hollows. These small signs of life lend a fragile vibrancy to an otherwise unyielding world. Glacier once carved these ridges, and though much of the ice has receded due to shifting climate patterns, the mountains still bear their mark. U-shaped valleys, moraines, and glacial lakes lie hidden between walls of fractured shale and granite. Some of these lakes are seasonal, appearing only when snowmelt feeds into long dry basins, turning them briefly into surreal mirrors that reflect both sky and stone in stunning symmetry. These ephemeral waters, some sacred to nomadic tribes, are believed to be haunted by spirits, whether ancestral or elemental, and are often avoided after dusk. Culturally, Altan occupies a space of invisibility. It does not figure prominently in mainstream Chinese travel circuits, and many of its valleys and ridges remain unnamed even in modern topographic records. Yet for centuries, this range has loomed large in the mental maps of those who dwell near its shadow. Tibetan nomads from Qinghai's southern prefectures still conduct seasonal movements along its southern foothills, their black yak hair tents blending into the terrain. These highland communities regard certain passes and springs as spiritually charged, performing rites to mountain gods with offerings of butter, incense, and barley flour. Ritual stones marked with spirals, suns, and the gangkiel, the symbolic wheel of unity, can be found etched into isolated boulders, testifying to a ritual life that still pulses just below the surface. One of the lesser-known marvels of the Altyn-Tag range is its archaeological richness. Scattered across its remote valleys are ancient petroglyphs, burial mounds, and ruined fortresses, their origins stretching back to Bronze Age cultures and early Scythian nomads. These sites are rarely visited and only partially documented. Stone-lined tombs dot the dry hillsides, often plundered by time or treasure hunters, yet still echoing the presence of long-lost civilizations. Some petroglyphs depict fantastical animals, horned birds, twin-headed deer, human figures with rays emanating from their heads, images that blend the ordinary and the mystical in ways that hint at the mountain's long-standing association with the supernatural. To journey through the Altyn-Tag is to submit to solitude. There are no marked paths, no safety rails, no tour groups or souvenir stalls. The silence is absolute, broken only by the hiss of wind across gravel or the distant rumble of shifting stones. The air is dry and thin, and the light is blinding during the day, casting long purple shadows across the ridges by dusk. In winter, temperatures plunge so low that even time seems to freeze. In summer, the sun bakes the earth until the rocks split and shimmer like glass. Every moment spent here feels mythic, both because of the intensity of the environment and because of how it pulls you away from everything modern, everything safe, everything known. Unlike more hospitable sacred ranges like the Himalayas or the Minute Mountains, Altyn-Tag does not comfort. It tests. It strips away the superficial and exposes the raw presence of the earth, vast and dispassionate. And in doing so, it evokes something sacred, not because it is beautiful in the conventional sense, but because it is true. This is a mountain range that does not care to be found, that offers no concessions to curiosity. Its beauty is severe, its wisdom indifferent. It teaches through absence, through challenge, through endurance. Mount Altyn-Tag stands as one of the most unreal places on the planet, not for any one vista, peak, or monument, but because it exists as a space beyond the margins, of maps, of memory, of comprehension. It is the edge of civilization and the entrance to a different kind of world, elemental, eternal, and unreachable in the ways that matter most. A world where every step forward feels like an echo, every gust of wind a whisper from something ancient, watching. Mount Haba, or Dabishan, straddles the border between Hubei and Anhui provinces like a vast, forested amphitheater, its ridges rolling into one another in long, elegant waves that seem to breathe with ancient rhythm. Unlike the harsh austerity of the Tibetan frontier or the icy drama of alpine peaks, Mount Haba offers a softer, almost primeval majesty, dense forests teeming with life, crystal rivers weaving through misty gorges, and hidden caves echoing with the passage of time. It is a place where earth and life exist in luxurious entanglement, where the green of the land seems to pulse with its own internal energy. Dabishan is not merely a mountain range, it is a living organism, rich with biodiversity, history, and cultural memory. Rising to just over 1,700 meters at its highest point, Mount Qiantang, Heavenly Hall Peak. The Haba range is not among China's tallest, yet its vast horizontal expanse and ecological complexity more than make up for its relative modesty in height. Stretching over 500 kilometers, the range is a critical watershed divide between the Huai River to the north and the Yangtze River to the south, a geographical feature that has influenced both climate and culture in the region for centuries. These mountains are where the subtropical south kisses the temperate north, and the resulting convergence has created a mosaic of microclimates and habitats found nowhere else in China. The forests of Mount Haba are among the oldest and most undisturbed in eastern China, harboring a remarkable array of plant species, many of them endemic. Towering stands of ancient cypress, oak, ginkgo, and camphor rise through layers of dense undergrowth composed of ferns, mosses, and wildflowers. In spring, the mountains explode into bloom with rhododendrons, azaleas, and magnolias, drawing clouds of butterflies and honeybees. In summer, the canopy thickens into a deep emerald blanket that hums with cicadas. Autumn transforms the hills into a sea of crimson, gold, and bronze as the deciduous trees shed their leaves in slow, swirling spirals. Even in winter, the mountains maintain a solemn beauty, cloaked in frost and mist, with evergreens standing vigil over snow-dusted trails. This richness in flora is mirrored in the region's fauna. Mount Haba is home to over 1,700 species of animals, including clouded leopards, golden pheasants, macaques, and a variety of rare reptiles and amphibians. The streams and rivers that trickle through the valleys host native fish and amphibian species found nowhere else. Their clear, cold waters fed by countless springs and snow melt. It is a sanctuary not just for biodiversity, but for continuity, a place where the ancient rhythms of evolution still play out unimpeded. Caves lace the mountain's granite heart like secret veins. Some are vast and cathedral-like, their ceilings lost in shadow and walls adorned with glittering stalactites and flowstone. Others are narrow and winding, requiring visitors to crawl or squeeze through ancient passages carved by underground rivers. Many of these caves have long been used by local communities for shelter, spiritual practice, or escape during times of conflict. Legends abound of hidden grottos that lead to other realms, of hermits who vanished into the mountain to seek immortality, and of treasures left behind by fleeing warlords, still waiting to be discovered beneath layers of calcified silence. The cultural heritage of Dabishan is as rich as its ecology. It has long been a stronghold for recluses, sages, and monks, those who sought not the heights of the world, but its depths. Daoist and Buddhist temples, the ridgelines and valleys, many half-claimed by the forest, their incense burners now host to vines and moss. Statues of Guanyin and Laozi peer out from between trees or sit cross-legged on stone platforms above roaring streams, their features softened by centuries of wind and rain. In the morning mist, these temples seem to materialize from the air itself, becoming part of the mountain rather than something built upon it. One of the most spiritually resonant areas of Mount Haba is around Chantangshui, a highland basin often referred to as the roof of eastern China. Here, the combination of elevation, seclusion, and panoramic views has made it a site of pilgrimage and quiet contemplation. Local legend claims that Chantangshui is a place where the boundary between heaven and earth is thin, where dreams take on the weight of prophecy, and where the mountains themselves can whisper truths to those who listen. Pilgrims have been known to journey here for personal revelation, walking barefoot along cold mountain paths, offering prayers at sacred springs, and meditating beneath waterfalls that crash with deafening force from hidden cliffs. But Dabishan has also played a central role in more terrestrial forms of history. During the 20th century, the range served as a crucial guerrilla base during multiple conflicts, particularly in the Chinese Civil War. Revolutionary fighters hid in its forests, built camouflaged bunkers in its hills, and used its natural terrain to stage surprise operations against superior forces. As a result, the mountain is also remembered as a cradle of resistance and resilience, and some trails, now reclaimed by hikers, were once routes for survival and freedom. Despite this turbulent past, the modern-day Haba Mountains remain a place of peace and healing. The region is increasingly recognized for its ecological value and has become the focus of conservation efforts and ecotourism initiatives. Protected reserves, such as the Haba Mountain National Nature Reserve, aim to preserve both the landscape and the traditional ways of life that have coexisted with it for generations. Local villages still practice time-honored forms of agriculture: terrace tea gardens, mushroom harvesting, bamboo crafts, sustainably interwoven with the rhythms of the land. These communities maintain an intimate, almost sacred relationship with the mountain, viewing it not as a resource to be exploited, but as an ancestor to be honored. The air in Dabishan carries with it the sense of wild herbs, damp soil, and flowering trees. The soundscape is equally rich: birdsong layered over the distant rush of water, the crackle of leaves underfoot, and the gentle chime of wind passing through branches. At sunrise, the mountaintops emerge from seas of cloud like islands in the sky. At night, the stars scatter across the sky in brilliant constellations unmarred by city lights. Every moment spent in this mountain range feels like stepping into a forgotten world, one where the forest still rules, where time moves slowly, and where the silence holds memory. Mount Haba is unreal not because it defies understanding, but because it fulfills something we've almost forgotten: the sense of harmony between human life and the living world. It is a place where you do not just observe nature, you become part of it. A place where the pulse of the forest matches the rhythm of your breath, and the mountain listens without judgment, offering not answers, but presence. Mount Zongar, a towering sentinel of the Kola Mountains in western Sichuan, rises in solemn silence over the highland plateaus and river valleys like a blade of ice carved directly from the sky. Often referred to as Mount Kola, This peak is among the sharpest and most visually arresting summits in all of eastern Tibet, a stark, snow-draped pyramid of rock and ice that dominates the landscape with an authority both fearsome and sublime. Unlike more famous mountains that adorn postcards and travel brochures, Dzongkar remains largely overlooked, whispered of among seasoned mountaineers and venerated quietly by the Tibetan communities who live in its long shadow. The Kola Mountains themselves are a sub-range of the broader Huanggang Mountains, running through the Gars Tibetan Autonomous Prefecture in Sichuan. This is a land of fierce beauty and isolation, where alpine forests give way to tundra, and then to high-altitude deserts beneath an ever-widening sky. Mount Dzongkar is the crown jewel of this range, rising to nearly 6,200 meters, its flanks etched with glacial ridges and vertical rock faces so steep they seem to defy the laws of gravity. Its sharp, triangular silhouette appears almost artificial from a distance, like a monument built by some ancient, unknowable force. What makes Mount Dzongkar particularly unreal is the purity of its form. There is a brutal elegance in the way its sharp ridgelines converge toward the summit, an architectural perfection that seems too precise for nature. When the clouds break and sunlight strikes the peak, its icy crown reflects a blinding white radiance that can be seen for kilometers in every direction. In stormy weather, the mountain vanishes into thick mists, only to reappear suddenly, looming and silent, as if conjured by the land itself. For the people who live nearby, Dzongkar is not just a mountain. It is a presence, a guardian, a god. Among Tibetan locals, Mount Dzongkar is considered Al-Ha-Ri, a sacred mountain inhabited by divine spirits. Entire villages perform annual rituals to honor its soul. Prayer flags flutter in the fierce wind across the ridgelines and high passes, their mantras carried toward the heavens with every gust. Cairns built from flat stones and crowned with yak horns or white scarves mark spiritual sites along the circumambulation route, which some pilgrims walk barefoot in a multi-day expression of devotion and penance. Many believe the mountain holds the power to purify karma, to offer visions in dreams, or to test the spiritual readiness of those who approach its flanks. Unlike many sacred mountains, Dzongkar remains largely untouched by large-scale tourism. There are no chairlifts, no paved viewing platforms, no gift shops or developed resorts. The remoteness of the region and the difficulty of access have preserved the mountain's raw, unmediated power. To reach the base of Dzongkar, one must pass through winding, treacherous roads that snake through alpine valleys, across suspension bridges above roaring rivers, and over high passes where snow can fall even in midsummer. Small Tibetan villages, stone-walled and smoke-scented, the journey, offering rest to travelers and holding tightly to customs passed down for generations. The ecology surrounding Mount Dzongkar is uniquely rich due to the intersection of elevation, climate, and geographic isolation. Marmots and pika dart among boulders on the lower slopes, while herds of blue sheep navigate impossibly steep crags with effortless grace. Above them, golden eagles will silently in the high air, and occasionally, the great snow leopard leaves its ghost-like tracks in the snow. In spring, patches of edelweiss and alpine primroses emerge between the rocks, their delicate blossoms defying the brutal cold. Here, life does not just survive, it declares itself in flashes of impossible beauty. Dzongkar is also a mountaineer's enigma. Unlike its more famous cousins, like Minya Konka or Mount Everest, it has seen only a handful of successful ascents. Its remoteness, unpredictable weather, avalanche-prone slopes, and technical difficulty make it one of the most challenging peaks in eastern Tibet. Few teams dare attempt it, and those who do often turn back, not in defeat, but in awe. Stories circulate among climbing circles of sudden whiteouts, vertiginous ice walls, and strange sounds echoing through the crevasses. Some say it's the ice groaning, others, more quietly, say the mountain is speaking. There is a paradox in Dzongkar's nature. It is both forbidding and magnetic. It does not invite conquest, it invites reverence. Even among those who are not religious, the experience of simply standing before this mountain often evokes a kind of spiritual silence. The sheer scale of the peak, rising suddenly and unapologetically from the surrounding valleys, confronts the observer with their own smallness. There is a power in such scale, not just physical but psychological. It reduces the ego, demands humility, and offers no illusion of control. And in that surrender, one may find something transcendent. Perhaps what makes Dzongkar truly unreal is not just its form or isolation, but its refusal to be known completely. It resists the tidy categories of geography or tourism. It offers no summary, no single photograph that can capture its spirit. Instead, it asks those who encounter it to listen, to the wind that combs its cliffs, to the chants of those who walk its base in prayer, to the silence that stretches between breaths at 5,000 meters. It is a teacher not of facts, but of perspective. A mirror that reflects not what you want to see, but what is. The mountain's name, Dzongkar, carries weight in Tibetan lore. It is said to mean the Great Pyramid or the Sacred Horn, depending on dialect and interpretation. And indeed, from certain angles, the mountain resembles both, a vast tetrahedron, reaching toward the cosmos, and a horn blown by the gods in an eternal call that echoes across the highland plateaus. Some elders speak of visions seen during snowstorms, of ancestors dancing along the ridgelines, of spirits taking the form of birds that vanish into the clouds. Whether one believes such stories or not, the atmosphere of Dzongkar lends them gravity. In the tapestry of unreal places on Earth, Mount Dzongkar is a jagged, glowing thread that defies erasure. It reminds us that mystery still exists in the world, not as a relic of the past, but as a living force. That there are still places where human ambition must bow to the mountain, where belief is etched into stone and ice, and where nature's sharpest edge still cuts deep into the soul. Mount Galagong, rising like a vast, breathing fortress along the western border of Yunnan province, is one of the last true wildernesses in China. An untouched sanctuary of forested ridgelines, plunging river canyons, mist-drenched peaks, and an abundance of life so rich and layered it almost overwhelms the senses. Stretching over 500 kilometers from the northwest near the Tibet-Yunnan border down toward northern Myanmar, the Galagong Range forms part of the massive Huanggang mountain system, and acts as a natural barrier between the Mekong and the Salween rivers, two of Asia's great lifelines. This land is not just mountainous. It is alive. It pulses with the breath of centuries, hides secrets in cloud-soaked canopies, and hums with the ceaseless movement of water, animals, and wind. Mount Galagong is a place where multiple worlds converge. Ecologically, it sits at the intersection of the eastern Himalayas and the tropical Indo-Burma region, creating one of the richest biodiversity hotspots on Earth. Botanically, it is a living museum, home to over 4,000 species of vascular plants, including ancient ferns, wild orchids, magnolias, and rhododendrons that blaze into bloom in spring like lanterns along the slopes. Many of the species here are relics of prehistoric eras, survivors of climate shifts, mass extinctions, and ice ages. They linger in the shade of the towering evergreens and clamber over the moss-covered boulders in shadowy ravines. Scientists often refer to Galagong as a refugium, a place where ancient life found a way to persist, adapting and enduring while the rest of the world changed. The animal life is equally astonishing. Rare species such as the red panda, clouded leopard, black snub-nosed monkey, and the endemic Galagong pika inhabit this verdant mountain corridor, rarely seen but ever present in the fabric of the forest. Colorful birds, barbets, sunbirds, laughing thrushes, and the vibrant Mrs. Hume's pheasant, flit between tree limbs or echo their calls into the mist. Amphibians and insects here are so numerous and unique that new species are still being discovered regularly, despite decades of scientific attention. This ecosystem is not quiet. It is a constant, vibrant, symphonic immersion in life. Yet to reduce Mount Galagong to a list of flora and fauna would be to miss the soul of the mountain. This is a place of water and mist, of myth and motion. Dozens of waterfalls, some plunging hundreds of meters from vertical cliffs, weave silver threads through the jungle-green folds of the mountain range. They burst from the rock with a wildness that feels primeval, unchained and utterly sovereign. These cascades fill narrow canyons with spray, creating temporary rainbows and bathing ancient stones in the continuous cycle of erosion and renewal. The forests here are layered in ways that seem theatrical. Dark, brooding conifers at the higher elevations give way to subtropical broadleaf species and lush bamboo thickets in the lower slopes, with trailing vines and flowering creepers connecting one realm to the next. In some places, the canopy is so thick that daylight struggles to reach the forest floor, and the air beneath takes on a cathedral-like hush broken only by the distant calls of monkeys or the splash of a falling leaf. Every inch of soil, every crack in stone, seems to thrum with life. Humans have long had a quiet, symbiotic relationship with these mountains. For centuries, local ethnic groups, including the Lisu, Nu, and Durung peoples, have lived along the flanks of Galagong, crafting their lives with careful reverence for the landscape. Their traditional wooden stilt homes perch precariously on ridges above valleys, surrounded by terraced rice fields and medicinal herb gardens. These communities speak languages that echo the rhythms of the land, and many still practice animistic beliefs that view the mountain itself as a living entity, a mother, a spirit, a guardian. Certain trees, springs, and stones are regarded as sacred, and small shrines can often be found hidden in groves or beside trails, decorated with offerings of fruit, rice, or burning incense. Mount Galagong's cultural significance also includes its place in history as part of the legendary Burma Road, a lifeline built during World War II to transport supplies from the British colony of Burma into interior China. The rugged terrain of Galagong formed a critical section of this route, and remnants of that harrowing path still remain. Stone bridges, collapsed shelters, rusted metal fragments buried in the soil. For those who walk these trails today, it's easy to feel the ghosts of history lingering beside the trees, whispering tales of resilience, hardship, and human connection carved through adversity. Despite its isolation, the mountain is not immune to modern pressures. Logging, once rampant, has been sharply curtailed due to Galagong's designation as a National Nature Reserve and a UNESCO World Biosphere Reserve. Conservation efforts here have been extensive and multifaceted, involving not just scientists and government officials, but local communities who have been empowered to act as guardians of their own ancestral lands. This fusion of indigenous knowledge and ecological science has turned Galagong into a beacon of sustainable conservation in China, one of the few places where biodiversity protection has not only survived but thrived. Yet, despite its ecological and cultural wealth, Galagong remains a realm of mystery, largely inaccessible to most travelers, wrapped in cloud cover and myth. There are no highways that carve through its core. No luxury lodges cling to its peaks. Those who visit must do so on foot, often trekking for days through steep, muddy trails, crossing rope bridges that sway over deep gorges, and sleeping in modest mountain lodges or village guesthouses. It is not a place that offers comfort. It offers encounter, raw, humbling, and often transformative. The mountain's highest ridges are often concealed by mist, and even on clear days, the weather can change within minutes. Lightning storms crack through the clouds, and fog can close in so thick it feels like walking through water. But in those brief moments when the sky parts, revealing the endless emerald folds of the range stretching toward Myanmar, with golden sunlight catching the spray of a distant waterfall, time itself seems to pause. The forest breathes. The mountains listen. And the visitor, if only for a moment, becomes part of something older, deeper, and infinitely more alive. What makes Mount Galagong unreal is not its rarity alone, but its wholeness. It is a complete world, a cradle of life untouched by the rush of modernity. It is a place where myth and biology merge, where every stone holds memory, and where nature still dreams in vibrant, unbroken color. It is not just a mountain, it is a living poem, sung in the voices of birds, in the rush of waterfalls, in the silence of the forest floor. To walk through Galagong is to return to the beginning, to the place where the earth still remembers what it means to be wild. Mount Helong, or Helongshan, rises from the southern folds of Yunnan province like a slumbering dragon basking beneath the amber glow of the highland sun. Unlike the glaciated spires or jungle-thickened ridges of Yunnan's other great peaks, Mount Helong is a vision shaped by fire and time, its crimson-hued slopes and layered terrain telling a story written in volcanic soil and terraced labor. These red earth mountains are some of the most visually arresting in the province, a surreal landscape of rolling scarlet hills, tiered green paddies, and morning skies so vivid they appear painted by gods. The very soil here seems to bleed color, glowing with copper and clay under the shifting light of day, and illuminating the valleys in a palette both dreamlike and deeply grounded. Located near Dongchuan in northeast Yunnan, Mount Helong and its surrounding range are renowned for their distinctive red land formations, an area known in Chinese as Dongchuan Hongtudi. Over centuries, the combination of high iron oxide content in the soil, coupled with wind and water erosion, has turned the landscape into a mosaic of brilliant crimson, rust, ochre, and gold. These earthen waves roll across the mountains in endless succession, like dunes caught in the slow motion of geological time. And woven into these slopes are rice terraces so precisely carved and so impossibly green, they seem to glow like emeralds against the iron-red mountainsides. The contrast is staggering. Fire and life, stone and cultivation, ancient land and modern hands, locked in eternal harmony. The terraced fields of Mount Helong are a marvel of agricultural engineering and endurance. carved meticulously over generations by local farmers, most of them of the Yi and Han ethnic groups. These terraces trace the curves of the hills like fingerprints, rising and falling with the contours of the land. During different times of the year, they transform the mountain into a living canvas. In spring, newly planted rice paddies shimmer like mirrors, reflecting the sky in a fractured mosaic of light. By summer, the fields burst into green, lush and full of motion as the wind dances through the young stalks. In autumn, the rice turns golden, echoing the tones of the surrounding hills. And in winter, mist and frost dust the terraces, turning them into ghostly outlines drawn in ashen smoke. At sunrise, Mount Helong becomes something truly unworldly. The light spills over the mountains from the east, turning the red soil to molten gold and the terraces to glowing stairways that appear to ascend into the sky. The clouds, if present, roll over the valleys like drifting lakes, and as the sun climbs, the colors shift through crimson, orange, and rose until the whole world seems reborn in flame. Photographers, painters, and travelers from across China make pilgrimages here just for these fleeting moments. Dawn scenes that have become the iconic images of rural Yunnan, capturing not just light, but essence. Yet Heilongjiang is not merely a feast for the eyes, it is a cradle of deep culture. The Yi people, who have lived in these hills for centuries, maintain traditions that are inseparable from the mountain itself. Their homes, often built from local stone and mud brick, blend into the landscape, appearing as extensions of the land rather than impositions upon it. During annual festivals like the Torch Festival, Huobeiji, the mountain is illuminated by flames and music as villagers dance in traditional costumes, beat drums, and chant songs handed down orally across countless generations. These events are not just celebrations, they are reaffirmations of identity, of community, and of the enduring relationship between people and place. There is something elemental about the way people live here. Water comes from mountain springs and irrigation channels, some dating back hundreds of years, carry it down to the terraces below. Farming follows the rhythm of the seasons and the shape of the hills, and every seed planted is done with an understanding of slope, sun, and soil. In this way, the mountain is not just a backdrop to life, it is the foundation of it. It dictates the layout of the village, the timing of the harvest, the very structure of thought. Even the legends born here reflect this intimate bond, tales of spirit guardians who dwell in old trees, of gods that sleep within stones, of ancestors who walked into the mountain and never returned, not out of loss, but to become part of it. The biodiversity of Heilongjiang, though not as famous as Galagong or Sichuan Banner, is quietly impressive. Its microclimates, generated by changes in elevation, slope, and sun exposure, support a wide array of flora and fauna. Wild herbs, mushrooms, and medicinal plants flourish in shaded gullies, while eagles soar above the ridgelines, and small mammals rustle through the bamboo groves. The red soil itself is not barren, but fertile, holding moisture, nutrients, and warmth that allow for a long growing season and a surprisingly diverse agricultural yield. Crops here are not only rice, but potatoes, maize, buckwheat, and even tobacco, all coexisting in a highland mosaic of human ingenuity. Trails wind through the hills, sometimes carved stone paths, sometimes little more than animal tracks, and those who follow them may stumble upon forgotten shrines, ancient fig trees, or vantage points where the entire world seems to unfold in layers of green, red, and sky. There is a rhythm to walking here, a meditative cadence that syncs with the landscape. You do not hurry across Mount Helong, you walk in step with it, and in doing so, begin to feel the timelessness that hums beneath the soil. While modernization is creeping in, cement roads, solar panels, and mobile reception, Heilongjiang retains much of its timeless character. It remains untouched by mass tourism, its beauty safeguarded not by fences, but by remoteness and reverence. For those who do make the journey, the reward is not just in seeing something extraordinary, it is in feeling something rare, a world still in balance, where color is not just visual, but spiritual. Where people live not beside the land, but within it. Mount Helong is unreal in the way memory is unreal. Familiar, evocative, impossible to replicate. It is a dream made of soil and sky, a vision in red and green that seems both impossibly ancient and always new. It does not shout for attention. It glows quietly, waiting for the light to find it, and when it does, it reveals not just itself, but something in you, a longing for harmony, for rhythm, for color that speaks to the soul. Mount Huangshan rises like a timeless sentinel above the Li River Valley in Guangxi, a landscape sculpted by water, wind, and millennia of quiet erosion into forms so surreal they seem painted rather than real. It is a karst wonderland, a place where stone and sky converse in sharp silhouettes and soft mist. Unlike towering peaks that pierce the heavens with glacial grandeur, Huangshan and its surrounding ridges are delicate, labyrinthine, and otherworldly. Jagged limestone spires, green-veined cliffs, and hidden hollows coiled together in patterns that defy straight lines and linear thought. This mountain and its broader range are nestled within the heart of Guilin's iconic karst landscape. Yet Huangshan, though less commercialized than nearby peaks like Huanggang or Luoxiao, offers something deeper and more untouched. It lies just beyond the common path, a secret corridor of vertical cliffs and sculpted hills rising above the serpentine turns of the Li River, Lijiang, which glides below like a ribbon of jade. To ascend Huangshan is to leave behind the crowds and drift upward into a realm of stone spires, mist-laced bamboo groves, and ancient forest sanctuaries where silence rules and the land dreams in geological time. The very earth here is different. Karst landscapes form when rainwater, mildly acidic, seeps into the ground, dissolving soluble limestone and dolomite into a chaos of caves, sinkholes, towers, and ridges. Over millions of years, this alchemy of water and stone carved Huangshan into a world of vertical poetry. Its cliffs are streaked with white and grey and sometimes stained red or green with mineral deposits or moss, their surfaces often etched with mysterious grooves and hollows that catch the golden morning light like ancient calligraphy. The ridgelines are narrow and sharp, with panoramic viewpoints that suddenly open to reveal vast networks of mist-wrapped peaks marching toward the horizon in endless, wave-like succession. These natural forms are not just beautiful, they are spiritually charged. The people of Guangxi, especially the local Zhuang and Yao communities, have long regarded the karst hills as sacred, the home of mountain spirits, river gods, and ancestral protectors. Mount Huangshan in particular is considered a dragon ridge by local geomancers, a place of strong earth energy, or qi, where the flow of the land harmonizes with the heavens. Shrines and small stone altars are tucked discreetly into rock alcoves along forested paths, their incense offerings curling upward into the canopy. Red ribbons tied to trees flutter with handwritten wishes, left by those seeking blessings from the mountain's quiet guardians. The vegetation of Huangshan is a marvel in itself. While the stone may seem harsh and unforgiving, the karst formations foster unique microhabitats, little niches of warmth, moisture, and shade that support species found nowhere else. Hardy shrubs and dwarf pines cling to sheer cliff faces, while camellias, azaleas, and fragrant osmanthus trees perfume the air deeper in the gullies. During spring, wild orchids bloom among the rocks, sometimes emerging from the narrowest cracks like flags of resilience. In the lower valleys, groves of bamboo sway gently beside waterfalls, their leaves catching the filtered sunlight in constant motion. It is a living gallery, each tree, vine, and flower placed with the careful precision of a master artist. Huangshan is also rich in avian life. The quiet ridges and forests echo with the calls of kingfishers, laughing thrushes, warblers, and sometimes the haunting cry of a hornbill overhead. Golden eagles occasionally ride the thermals near the cliffs, their shadows sliding like ancient omens across the river's surface below. In the damp mornings, frogs call from hidden pools, and dragonflies skim over water that reflects the stone peaks in perfect reverse. The entire ecosystem seems built around stillness and surprise, alive with beauty, but never demanding attention. You have to listen. You have to wait. And then there's the light. Oh, the light on Huangshan. At dawn, the mists rise from the Li River like breath from a sleeping god, curling up around the stone towers and catching fire as the first rays of the sun break over the eastern rim. The entire mountain glows in amber and gold, the fog becoming translucent, revealing fleeting visions of summits and ridges that appear, then vanish again. By midday, the sky opens into brilliant blue, contrasting sharply with the green-covered cliffs and giving the whole landscape a surreal, hyperreal clarity. At dusk, the world softens, the river glimmers with reflected flame, and the limestone turns pale violet, its edges softened by the dying sun. On clear nights, the stars spill across the sky with rare intensity, and from high on the mountain, the lights of distant villages twinkle like forgotten constellations mirrored on earth. Culturally, Huangshan remains grounded in rural life. Below the mountains, the Li River Valley is dotted with small farming villages, where people still till rice paddies by hand and dry corn on rooftops. These communities are modest and slow-paced, but deeply attuned to the land. Terraced fields rise up the lower slopes of the mountain like ripples on a drum, and winding stone paths connect homes, temples, and fields in a way that reflects centuries of lived harmony with the landscape. Local legends speak of hidden caves filled with glowing crystals, of immortals who once walked Huangshan's highest ridges, and of sacred animals who guard its hidden springs. Every rock, every bend in the trail, seems to hold a story. And for the few who make the effort to climb Huangshan, there is a transformation that occurs, not just in elevation, but in perception. With each step upward, the sounds of the world below fade, the hum of the river, the occasional voice, the clatter of daily life, until all that remains is the whisper of wind through leaves and the steady beat of your heart. From the summit, the world stretches wide and intricate, the river curling like jade thread through the mountains, the karst towers rising like the spines of sleeping dragons. The view humbles you. It clarifies. It reveals not just the geography of Guangxi, but the quiet enormity of time, and your small but precious place within it. Mount Huangshan is unreal not because it is unreachable, but because it feels like it belongs to another realm entirely, a dream remembered from a life you never lived, a painting that has somehow become a place. It does not shout its wonders. It offers them slowly, humbly, in layers of mist and stone and silence. It is a place where the earth still sculpts itself with grace, and where those who come with open hearts may glimpse not just beauty, but the sacred geometry of the world. The Nanling Mountains, stretching gracefully across the southern reaches of China, form a vast and undulating chain of emerald ridges, mist-laced valleys, and deep ravines that whisper the stories of two ancient river civilizations. Acting as a natural barrier between the Yangtze River Basin to the north and the Pearl River Basin to the south, the Nanling Range is more than just a geographic boundary. It is a bridge between climates, cultures, and ecosystems. This mountain system, sometimes overlooked in favor of more dramatic or iconic peaks, holds within its folds a quiet majesty and timeless vitality that few places on Earth can match. Spanning the provinces of Guangdong, Hunan, Jiangxi, Guangxi, and northern Fujian, the Nanling Mountains extend like a living spine through southern China. Though their peaks rarely soar to the dizzying heights of the Himalayas or Hungduan ranges, their terrain is rugged, vast, and deeply influential. The range serves as a climatic hinge between the subtropical monsoon zone of central China and the humid tropics of the far south. Because of this, the Nanling Mountains nurture extraordinary biodiversity and remain one of the most ecologically rich regions in East Asia. This is a land where rain is almost constant. Moisture-laden air from the South China Sea ascends the mountain slopes and condenses into frequent showers and fog banks that shroud the forests in ethereal veils. The result is a lush, vibrant biome where vegetation drapes every surface, from towering canopy trees to moss-coated boulders and fern-carpeted forest floors. The richness of this environment has allowed rare and endemic species to flourish, many of which cannot be found anywhere else in the world. The Nanling is home to the elusive South China tiger, once widespread but now critically endangered, alongside civets, pangolins, serows, and golden pheasants. These mountains also harbor a treasure trove of amphibians and insects, especially in the shadowy understories where life hums quietly, yet fiercely. The plant life is equally impressive. Ancient ginkgos and cycads share the canopy with Chinese firs and subtropical hardwoods. In spring, rhododendrons, azaleas, and camellias explode into bloom, scattering their colors like confetti across the mountain slopes. Wild bamboo, orchids, and medicinal herbs flourish here as well, many of which have been used in traditional Chinese medicine for centuries. To botanists, the Nanling region is often described as a green museum, an ark preserving species that date back to the time of dinosaurs. But the Nanling Mountains are not just a refuge for flora and fauna, they are deeply human as well. For thousands of years, these mountains have shaped the flow of history, serving both as a protective barrier and a conduit of migration. Ancient trade routes, such as the Luoxiao Canal, a marvel of pre-modern engineering, cut through the mountains to connect the Yangtze and Pearl River systems, allowing the exchange of goods, language, and ideas between the north and south. This canal, built in the 3rd century BCE during the Qin dynasty, is among the oldest man-made waterways in the world and stands as a testament to the strategic importance of the Nanling Range in China's historical development. Within the range, countless small villages are nestled in forested basins or clinging to narrow ridgelines, their stone and timber houses often shrouded in early morning mist. Many of these communities belong to ethnic minority groups such as the Yao, Zhuang, Dong, and Miao peoples, who have preserved unique languages, rituals, and artistic traditions over centuries of semi-isolated living. The mountains themselves are seen by many of these groups not just as physical surroundings, but as sacred ancestors, spiritual entities imbued with wisdom and deserving of respect. Shrines can be found near waterfalls, forest glades, and cliff faces, often adorned with red ribbons, incense sticks, and symbolic offerings of fruit or rice wine. The rhythm of life here is slow, cyclical, and intimately attuned to the land. Terraced rice fields, tea plantations, and small fruit orchards trace the contours of the valleys. Farmers rise early to till the fields by hand or with water buffalo, guided more by weather patterns and ancestral wisdom than by machines. During seasonal festivals like the Yao's Panwang Festival or the Dongskam Grand Choir gatherings, the mountains come alive with music, dance, and flame-lit processions, filling the quiet wilderness with the deep heartbeat of culture. Woven among these cultural tapestries are the remnants of ancient temples and stone paths, silent witnesses to the pilgrims, monks, and scholars who once traveled the Nanling corridors in search of enlightenment or sanctuary. Many of these temples are dedicated to mountain deities or bodhisattvas associated with compassion and protection, and some are perched in near-impossible places, overlooking gorges or clinging to cliff walls. Visiting them is not easy. It requires patience, strength, and often long hours of hiking through steep trails and tangled forest, but the reward is profound. In these high, hidden places, silence reigns. Only the wind in the leaves and the distant cry of birds accompany the pilgrim's steps. The geography of the Nanling Mountains creates a constantly shifting play of light and shadow. Early morning mists roll across the valleys like milk poured through the trees, softening every outline. As the sun climbs, shafts of gold pierce the canopy, igniting the dew-laden foliage into 1,000 glistening stars. Rain often arrives without warning, clouds swelling silently until they burst and drench the forest in cool, cleansing water. Then, just as suddenly, the sky clears, and steam rises from the forest floor as if the land itself is exhaling. Twilight in the Nanling is a moment of exquisite peace, as frogs and cicadas begin their evening chorus and the sky turns from coral to indigo above the darkening peaks. Hikers and explorers who traverse this mountain chain speak of its hypnotic effect, a kind of slow enchantment. Unlike the dramatic drama of more vertical landscapes, the Nanling experience is immersive, gradual, and encompassing. Trails wind through bamboo groves, over mossy stone bridges, beside jade-green rivers, and into forgotten clearings where ancient trees preside like silent monks. Time loses its grip here. Each step forward becomes a step deeper into a world governed not by clocks, but by the rustle of wind in the canopy and the pulsing rhythm of unseen life beneath the soil. Mount Nanling is unreal in its ability to be both vast and intimate, ancient and ever-renewing. It is a place where the grand cycles of nature continue, largely undisturbed, and where humanity has found a way not just to survive, but to harmonize. It is not a mountain that seeks attention. It waits, quietly, knowing that those who come with eyes open and hearts softened by curiosity will find something far greater than scenery. They will find continuity, sanctuary, and a vision of how life might be lived differently. Mount Longhushan, literally Dragon Tiger Mountain, rises with a quiet yet formidable grace from the heart of Jiangxi province, its red sandstone cliffs glowing like ancient embers beneath the shifting skies. This mountain is more than just a geological wonder or a natural sanctuary. It is one of China's most sacred landscapes, long revered as the mythic cradle of Taoism. Here, amid winding rivers, vertical rock faces, and mist-laced bamboo forests, gods have walked, immortals have practiced alchemy, and sages have left their mark upon stone and spirit alike. From a distance, Longhushan seems to slumber, its ridges curved and coiled like the bodies of celestial beasts. According to legend, the shape of the mountain resembles a dragon lying on one side and a tiger crouching on the other, their forms locked in eternal harmony. This image, this dance of opposites, is deeply Taoist in essence. Yin and yang, force and form, action and stillness. That symbolic geometry has made this place one of the holiest sites in Taoist cosmology for over 2,000 years. A place where the veil between heaven and earth feels uniquely thin. Geologically, Longhushan is an extraordinary display of Danxia landforms. Massive red sandstone cliffs and freestanding peaks sculpted over eons by wind and water. The exposed rock faces, rising vertically in bold, curving plains, are rich in iron and oxidized minerals that give them their deep ochre and crimson tones. Time has carved the cliffs into strange and striking shapes. Narrow spires, isolated towers, and vast overhangs that cast long shadows across the verdant forests below. These formations are not only arresting to the eye but steeped in names and meanings. Dragon's Tail Cliff, Celestial Writing Brush, Immortal's Bed, and more, each echoing the folklore and cosmology of this sacred place. At the heart of Mount Longhushan lies the Qianxia Mansion, once home to the celestial master, Qianxia, of Taoism. The first celestial master, Zhong Daoling, is said to have attained enlightenment here during the Eastern Han dynasty in the 2nd century CE, establishing the Zhangyi sect of Taoism. Legends claim he was granted teachings from Laozi himself, and through intense spiritual cultivation and alchemical practice, he achieved immortality on this very mountain. His descendants continued to live here for generations, forming a spiritual dynasty that governed Taoist affairs for centuries. The Celestial Master's mansion still stands, rebuilt many times after war and time, but the energy of its presence, the sense of continuity, remains palpable. Walking through the ancient complexes, one encounters halls adorned with statues of Laozi, the Three Pure Ones, and a multitude of other deities and celestial figures. Incense burns in large bronze cauldrons, bells ring softly in the wind, and red silk prayer slips flutter from tree branches, each bearing a wish, a vow, or a word of gratitude. Monks and priests still live and practice here, preserving the rituals, texts, and meditative disciplines of their lineage. Every detail, from the way the steps are arranged to the orientation of gates and shrines, follows the principles of Taoist geomancy, meant to balance the flow of qi, or life energy. But Longhushan's sacredness isn't confined to its temples. The entire mountain breathes with mystery, particularly along the cliffs that loom over the Luoxiao River, a slow, sinuous body of water that coils around the base of the mountain like a jade serpent. Here, boat tours glide past sheer rock walls that rise hundreds of meters straight from the water, their flanks etched with dark entrances to tombs carved into the stone. These are the hanging cliff tombs of the Han dynasty, an archaeological marvel and a mystery yet unsolved. Dozens of these tombs are nestled high up on the vertical rock face, some of them seemingly unreachable even with modern climbing gear. Inside, archaeologists have found wooden coffins, burial artifacts, and traces of ancient rituals. The big question remains: how were these tombs constructed? How did people 2 millennia ago raise coffins and materials to such heights, chiseling chambers into solid rock without scaffolding, cranes, or modern tools? Some believe rope systems and scaffolding were used. Others suggest that parts of the cliff eroded away over time, leaving the tombs stranded mid-air. Whatever the method, the effect is haunting, lifeless chambers suspended between heaven and earth, just like the Taoist vision of the afterlife. These tombs underscore one of Longhushan's most profound truths, that life and death, spirit and matter, the seen and unseen, all exist in layered proximity here. You do not just walk on soil, you walk above ancestors. You do not just gaze at stone, you gaze into eternity. In the Taoist worldview, nature is the great teacher, the great purifier, and nowhere is that teaching more direct than here, where every shape in the land seems to speak in metaphor, and every sound, the river, the wind, the soft chanting of monks, is a verse in a cosmic poem. Climbing the mountain's trails is an experience that moves the soul and slows the heart. Stone staircases rise through bamboo forests and shaded ravines, lined by mossy railings and the occasional dragon-headed fountain gurgling with spring water. Higher up, observation platforms offer sweeping vistas across the Danxia landscape, dozens of red towers and green-cloaked ridges rolling to the horizon like frozen waves. Clouds drift low across the valley floor, and as they rise, they touch the peaks and dissolve like breath, revealing shrines perched on impossible outcroppings, reached only by narrow paths carved into rock. The silence here is not absence, it is presence, a spaciousness in which thought quiets, and something deeper begins to stir. Local traditions thrive around the mountain. Villagers offer incense on the 1st and 15th day of the lunar month. Festivals like the Taoist Lantern Festival or the birthday of Laozi transform the mountain into a realm of glowing lights and sacred music. Lanterns drift down the river like souls returning home. Taoist rituals, complete with music, robes, and rhythmic invocation, are performed to bless the land and commune with the heavens. Visitors, even those unfamiliar with the faith, often find themselves pulled into the rhythm of reverence. The mountain opens slowly, not with spectacle, but with invitation. There is also adventure here, cave exploration, cliffside paths, and kayaking along the jade waters of the Luoxiao. But even in these moments of thrill, the sacred lingers. Every turn in the river, every echo in the cliffs, reminds you that this place is old, older than kingdoms, older than memory. And the more you see, the more you realize that the unrealness of Mount Longhushan is not in fantasy, but in the way it folds history, spirituality, and nature into one seamless reality. Longhushan is not loud. It is not ostentatious. Its power lies in subtlety, in resonance. It is a place where the divine is not distant, but threaded through every tree, every rock, every breath of mist. To stand upon its cliffs, with the wind brushing your face and the Luoxiao River whispering below, is to feel the Tao itself moving through the world, not as a philosophy, but as a living, breathing presence. Mount Jinfo, Golden Buddha Mountain, rises from the southwestern edges of Chongqing like a colossal altar carved by gods, its form crowned by clouds, its slopes dressed in myth and mist. Part of the UNESCO-protected South China Karst region, this awe-inspiring peak stands as a masterpiece of geological artistry and ecological wealth. Though often overshadowed by more famous ranges in the west or north, Mount Jinfo holds its own majesty, an unreal place where stone, sky, and spirit converge in a breathtaking convergence of nature's raw power and quiet wisdom. Standing at over 2,200 meters above sea level, Mount Jinfo is the highest point in the Delu mountain system. Its very name, Golden Buddha, evokes a sense of divine presence, and indeed, at sunrise, when the early light casts its golden hue across the mountaintop, the entire peak glows as though lit from within, as if a slumbering deity has momentarily opened its eyes. The locals say the mountain appears to sit in the lotus posture when viewed from a distance, evoking the silhouette of a meditating Buddha, calm and immovable. This sacred image is no coincidence. For centuries, Buddhist monks and Taoist ascetics have traveled to this peak for solitude and revelation, carving temples into cliffs and etching sutras into stone walls. What sets Mount Jinfo apart from many of its karst siblings across southern China is not only its elevation, but its ecological stratification. The mountain functions like a living ladder, climbing through multiple climate zones in the span of a single hike. Starting at the base, where the air is warm and filled with the scent of subtropical blooms, you pass through deciduous woodlands alive with chirping cicadas and darting butterflies. As you ascend, the vegetation changes. The trees grow taller and older, their branches interlaced with thick vines and the mossy fingerprints of endless rain. Ferns as tall as men brush your shoulders, orchids hide in the crooks of ancient trunks. And then, higher still, you enter the famous cloud forest, a realm wrapped in silver mist and silence. The cloud forests of Mount Jinfo are unlike any others in China. Perpetually shrouded in fog, this upper realm is cool, damp, and ethereal. Every surface glistens with moisture. Mosses form carpets so thick they silence footsteps. The air is cool, even in summer, and the light filtered through the clouds lends everything a dreamlike glow. It is easy to imagine stepping through a veil into another world entirely, one governed not by time, but by breath, by rhythm, by presence. The biodiversity here is extraordinary. More than 5,000 species of plants are found on the mountain, including countless medicinal herbs, rare orchids, and endemic trees. Some specimens, like the ancient ginkgo biloba or the primitive dawn redwood, are living fossils, survivors from a prehistoric Earth. Animal life thrives here, too, though much of it is shy and hidden. The mountain is home to the elusive clouded leopard, the endangered blackleaf monkey, and a myriad of bird species, from the iridescent minavets to the haunting call of the silver pheasant echoing through the fog. Amphibians unique to this microclimate live in the quiet pools and dripping limestone hollows. Insects and fungi too rare to name flourish in the shadowed groves, each one a thread in the delicate lace of the mountain's ecosystem. And then there are the cliffs, those towering, vertical walls of limestone and dolomite that rise in stark contrast to the soft curves of the forests. These cliffs are massive and almost blinding in their whiteness, their faces etched with horizontal lines from ancient seabeds and punctuated with caverns and sinkholes. Caves here run deep into the mountain's heart, many of them unexplored and rumored to hold subterranean rivers, lost species, and hidden temples. One of the most famous is Jinfo Cave, a vast, cathedral-like chamber filled with limestone stalactites shaped like dragons, lotus petals, and Buddhist deities, natural sculpture shaped by dripping water over millions of years. Visitors to Mount Jinfo often describe the sensation not just of awe, but of transcendence. The journey to the summit can take several hours, either by winding trails or via cable car for those less inclined to hike. But the path itself is part of the experience. Wooden boardwalks cling to sheer cliffs, offering panoramic views that open suddenly through breaks in the trees. Waterfalls burst unexpectedly from rock faces, plunging hundreds of feet into invisible ravines. The sound of rushing water and rustling leaves becomes a kind of meditation, a rhythm that syncs with your own breath and heartbeat. At the summit, weather permitting, the view is indescribable. The sea of clouds, common here, rolls below like an ocean of vapor, hiding the world beneath in shifting white folds. Peaks pierce the cloud layer like islands. The sun, if it breaks through, illuminates everything in hues of gold and silver, casting long shadows and lighting up the dew-drenched canopy. The famous Buddha's light, a circular rainbow-like halo caused by sunlight and mist, is occasionally visible here, a rare meteorological phenomenon that only adds to the mystique of this sacred place. Historically, Mount Jinfo has attracted pilgrims as much as it has drawn scientists and explorers. Numerous temples to the mountain's higher reaches, some no more than small shrines hidden in rock alcoves. Others full monastic complexes nestled into ledges with commanding views of the valleys below. The Golden Summit Temple is perhaps the most iconic, a small yet profound sanctuary perched precariously near the top, where monks chant in the early hours and the scent of incense mingles with the cool mountain breeze. These places are not crowded tourist spots, they are lived in, sacred, and profoundly quiet. Even secular visitors find themselves whispering, instinctively lowering their voices in the presence of something greater than themselves. In recent years, Mount Jinfo has been recognized not only for its cultural and spiritual significance but also for its global ecological value. It was named part of the UNESCO South China Karst World Heritage Site in 2014, joining an elite family of protected landscapes that includes Wulingyuan, Libo, and Shilin. The Chinese government and international conservation groups have worked together to monitor and preserve this mountain's unique ecosystems. Sustainable tourism has been carefully encouraged. Boardwalks protect fragile vegetation, and ranger stations educate visitors about the importance of the flora and fauna they encounter. And still, despite these modern touches, Mount Jinfo retains its primal power. Its silence is profound, not empty but filled with unseen life. Its forests feel older than memory. Its cliffs seem carved not by erosion, but by divine intent. To walk here is to be reminded of scale, of time, of breath, of the wildness that lives just beyond the reach of our structured lives. It is not just a mountain, it is a mirror that reflects both the smallness and the potential of the human spirit. Mount Jinfo is unreal not in the sense of being imaginary, but in the way it defies expectation. It is real, physical, massive, and yet it feels like a dream you once had, a vision of paradise barely remembered. Here, at the meeting point of earth and sky, science and faith, history and mystery, the world unfolds with quiet grandeur. And those who climb it, who breathe its mist and listen to its silence, do not come down unchanged. Mount Qingliang, translated as Cool Mountain, rests not in dramatic isolation or towering prominence, but rather in gentle grace and quiet dignity in Nanjing, Jiangsu province. Though modest in elevation compared to China's more celebrated peaks, Qingliangshan holds a spiritual weight and cultural depth that far exceeds its physical height. This forested hill, veiled in cool air and shaded paths, pulses with echoes of the past, of monks and poets, emperors and exiles, all of whom found here a refuge of calm in times of great turbulence. The mountain's name, Qingliang, refers not only to its pleasantly cool microclimate, which offers respite during Jiangsu's humid summers, but also to the spiritual coolness valued in Chan, Zen, Buddhist thought, a state of clarity, detachment, and serene awareness. It is here that some of the most influential figures in Chinese Buddhism once walked barefoot among the pines, their footprints metaphorically imprinted into the mountain's soul. This is not a place of spectacle or grandeur. It is a sanctuary, a mountain of stillness, where thoughts dissolve into the rustling of leaves and the quiet flow of spring water. Nestled within the urban bounds of Nanjing, Mount Qingliang may at first seem more like a park than a wild mountain, but that simplicity belies its immense historical resonance. During the Southern Tang dynasty, 937 to 975 AD, this hill served as the imperial garden of Li Jing, the second emperor of that short-lived kingdom. Under his rule, Qingliangshan became not just a royal retreat, but a center of poetry, reflection, and cultural cultivation. Poets and painters gathered beneath the shade of ancient trees, crafting verses and ink scrolls inspired by the mountain's gentle contours and serene ambience. The southern Tang court, though politically unstable, produced some of the most refined artistic and literary work of its time, and much of that refinement was born or nurtured on this hill. The Buddhist significance of Qingliangshan, however, is even deeper. During the Song dynasty, the mountain became home to the Qingliang Temple, a major center for Chan Buddhism and the residence of the famed monk master Fayan Weni. Fayan was one of the 5 houses of Chan and is revered as the founder of the Fayan school, which emphasized both doctrinal learning and meditative insight. Under his guidance, Qingliangshan became a crucible of Chan thought, where disciples engaged in rigorous inquiry, spontaneous dialogue, gongan, or koan practice, and long periods of silent sitting beneath the pines. The Qingliang Temple, though rebuilt many times over the centuries, still stands today as a quiet monument to this philosophical lineage. Its halls are understated, with simple wooden beams and grey-tiled roofs, blending harmoniously with the natural surroundings. Within its main hall sits a statue of a seated Buddha, serene, golden, and framed by incense smoke that rises in steady trails to the open rafters above. Outside, in the temple courtyard, stone lanterns line the moss-covered paths, and ginkgo trees fan out their ancient leaves like prayer flags. Monks in saffron robes tend to the temple garden, their movements slow and deliberate, embodying the principle that every action, even the raking of gravel, is a form of mindfulness. Climbing the hill itself is an act of meditation. The forest path, worn smooth by centuries of steps, winds gently upward through groves of pine, cedar, and ginkgo. Birds call overhead, thrushes, bulbuls, and sometimes the coo of doves echoing from unseen perches. The air is crisp even in midsummer, and the light that filters through the canopy dapples the path with shifting mosaics. Scattered along the ascent are small shrines, stone steles inscribed with ancient verse, and forgotten pavilions where poets once composed their thoughts. One such structure, the Pavilion of Autumn Thoughts, Qiuxi Ting, is said to have been favored by Li Yu, the last southern Tang emperor, whose melancholic poems still haunt Chinese literature. It is easy to see why he came here in exile. The mountain does not judge, it listens. Perhaps the most spiritually evocative spot on Qingliangshan is the ancient meditation platform near the summit, known as the Place of Silent Illumination. Here, high above the murmuring city, sits a simple flat stone encircled by aged trees. Tradition holds that Fayan Weni and his disciples would sit here for hours, their minds stilled in contemplation of the empty sky and the rustling forest. No walls separate this place from the world. It is open to wind and birdsong, to the passage of clouds and time. To sit here is to understand why Chan Buddhism favors simplicity, not as lack, but as fullness uncluttered. It is said that if one breathes slowly and listens with the heart, the mountain itself will teach. Despite being within a major metropolis, Qingliangshan has largely avoided the fate of over-commercialization. Visitors come, yes, but they come in quiet or not noisy spectacle. Students arrive to sketch the old temples or compose poems beneath the trees. Elderly couples stroll arm in arm along the stone paths. Monks chant softly behind wooden gates, their rhythms blending with the wind through bamboo. And every so often, a traveler from afar, drawn not by fame but by word of mouth, sits at the edge of a pavilion, watching the city below, and realizes they found something rare: stillness in the storm. The views from the higher points of the hill offer a compelling juxtaposition. In one direction, the ancient tiles of Qingliang Temple and the whispering trees. In the other, the modern skyline of Nanjing stretching into the haze. It is a living parable of China itself, a nation straddling old and new, memory and momentum, the tangible and the eternal. Mount Qingliang, though small, exists in the interstice between these forces, a quiet guardian of balance and perspective. In the spring, cherry blossoms bloom across the hill, drawing waves of pink and white across the green canvas. In autumn, the ginkgo leaves fall like golden coins, carpeting the ground in soft splendor. In winter, the mountain sleeps beneath frost, its silence deepened. But no matter the season, Mount Qingliang remains unchanged in essence, a place of retreat, of reflection, and of return. Mount Qingliang is unreal not in spectacle, but in serenity. It is the kind of place that doesn't demand reverence but quietly evokes it. It doesn't astonish, it restores. And perhaps, in a world that races ever faster toward distraction, there is nothing more miraculous than a hill that simply invites you to sit, to breathe, and to remember who you are. Mount Huanggang, Huanggang, stands like a dream unraveled over the southern expanse of Jiangxi province, a wave of golden grasslands, rolling ridgelines, and ridges swept clean of forest, cradling the sky as though it had been born of clouds. Unlike the towering granite sentinels of the west or the jagged cast sculptures of the south, Huanggang draws its magic not from violence or extremity, but from grace, an otherworldly balance of elemental simplicity and infinite openness. It is not just a mountain, it is a stage, a cathedral of wind and light, where the earth rises to touch heaven with soft hands. Rising to just over 1,900 meters at its highest point, Baihefeng, or White Crane Peak, Huanggang forms the eastern edge of the Luoxiao mountain range, separating Jiangxi from Hunan. And yet, despite its modest height compared to some of China's more famous peaks, Huanggang holds a reputation all its own. Among those who have wandered its slopes, it is spoken of in reverent tones. It is a place of pilgrimage not for religion, but for sky, an open altar of nature where sky and earth seem to merge and breathe together. This is one of the few places in the world where you can lie back in a sea of mountain grass and watch clouds flow below you as if you were afloat in the heavens. The defining feature of Mount Huanggang is its high-altitude grasslands. Unlike the densely forested mountains that dominate much of southern China, Huangdang's upper reaches are bald, covered instead by vast, uninterrupted meadows. These grasslands, rolling, golden, swaying like the sea, stretch in all directions, rising and falling over gentle summits and saddleback ridges. In spring and early summer, they glow green with new life, punctuated by wildflowers. Tiny bluebells, pink mountain orchids, white yarrow, and yellow daisies that seem to mirror the stars. In autumn, the grasses turn a deep amber, rustling in the wind like fire turned soft. Walking here is like stepping into a moving painting. The trails are many, but the most famous route snakes along the ridgetops, offering panoramic views on both sides. One moment shrouded in fog, the next bathed in sharp sunlight. There are no dense forests to obstruct your view, no walls of rock to hem you in. Instead, there is space, wind, and movement. The sensation is of constant transition, as though the mountain itself were exhaling. With every step, the world transforms. Clouds part, shadows shift, the colors of the grasses change under passing sunbeams, and in the distance, the ridgelines recede into layers of watercolor blues and purples. Perhaps the most transcendent experience at Huanggang is the Sea of Clouds. This phenomenon, best witnessed at dawn or after rain, occurs when dense fog accumulates in the valleys below the ridges, leaving only the peaks and ridgelines visible above a vast, swirling blanket of white. Standing at one of the high points, especially Baihefeng, you feel as though you are on an island in the sky. The clouds drift and churn below like a slow-motion ocean, pierced by other peaks like scattered archipelagos. Sunlight filters through, turning the mist golden or lavender, and sometimes, when the light is just right, a Brocken spectre appears. Your shadow cast upon the fog, encircled by a rainbow-like halo. It is one of nature's rarest illusions, and yet at Huanggang, it is almost commonplace. Camping is an integral part of the Huanggang experience. Unlike many other Chinese mountains where overnight stays are restricted or limited to mountaintop lodges, Huanggang encourages a closer relationship with nature. Campers pitch tents directly on the grassy ridges, forming dotted constellations of color beneath the stars. At night, the temperature drops, and the wind whispers across the grass like ancient song. The sky, free from city light, bursts open with stars. The Milky Way arcs above, mirrored faintly by the glinting dew on the blades of grass. It is an experience that reminds you just how vast, and how quiet, the universe can be. Despite its surreal beauty, Huanggang is not empty. It has a history, both mythic and material. The name Huanggang, Mountain of the Martial Duke, is believed to be derived from Wu Gong, a legendary Taoist hermit and immortal who is said to have cultivated spiritual powers here during the Jin dynasty. Ancient stone altars and Taoist shrines still remain tucked into less visited corners of the mountain, sometimes found in clearings or tucked under overhangs, where incense still burns and offerings of fruit or rice are occasionally left behind by those who remember the old ways. But the true spirituality of Huanggang lies not in its temples, but in its atmosphere. It is a sacredness born of elemental purity, the wind, the space, the movement of clouds. It requires no doctrine, No architecture, no ritual. Just presence. And presence, on this mountain, is inevitable. The silence is so deep you begin to hear your heartbeat echo. The wind is so alive it feels like breath against your skin. And the views are so expansive they stretch your thoughts until you forget the boundaries of your own self. During festivals or long weekends, hikers arrive from all over China. Young backpackers, spiritual seekers, landscape photographers, and urbanites looking to reclaim something primal and simple. Yet even with many visitors, Huanggang never feels crowded. The openness of the terrain allows for solitude, for small moments of pause and reflection amid the movement. You can sit alone on a grassy slope for hours, watching the sky change color, without a single person passing by. And when others do cross your path, the shared wonder often leads not to conversation, but to knowing nods and quiet smiles. Words are unnecessary when the world is this vast. There are forested sections as well, especially along the lower trails, where pine and bamboo line stone-paved paths and waterfalls tumble through green ravines. These areas, humid and rich in birdsong, provide a striking contrast to the windswept openness above. Wildlife, though not abundant at the summit, thrives in these wooded valleys. Small deer, civets, squirrels, and many species of birds make their home in the forests, while eagles and hawks are often seen riding thermals above the ridges. The ecological value of Huanggang has increasingly drawn the attention of conservationists. As part of a national nature reserve, efforts have been made to protect the fragile highland grassland ecosystem, which supports a variety of rare alpine plants and is especially vulnerable to overuse and erosion. Trails are now clearly marked, and certain areas are seasonally restricted to allow for regeneration. These measures, though subtle, have helped preserve the unique character of the mountain and ensure that its unreal beauty remains undiminished for generations to come. Mount Huanggang is the kind of place that doesn't just impress, it transforms. It doesn't dazzle with drama, it dissolves the need for it. Here, your worries stretch thin and vanish into the clouds. Your breath slows. Your senses sharpen. And somewhere on the trail, in the golden hush of the grass or the firelit quiet of a mountaintop camp, you remember a version of yourself that is simpler, freer, and infinitely more alive. To visit Huanggang is to walk above the clouds and to carry the memory of that feeling back into the world below. It is unreal not because it is a fantasy, but because it shows you that another way of being present, open, and attuned, is not only possible, but real. It is there, waiting, swaying in the wind above the world. Mount Sichuan, is a place that seems lifted straight from the brush of an artist who dreamed in deep crimson and sunlight-dappled green. Nestled in the vibrant province of Yunnan, a region already overflowing with geographical drama and cultural richness, Mount Sichuan is a lesser-known jewel that refuses to shout for attention. Instead, it quietly stuns. With its painted red peaks, pine-strewn slopes, and wildflower-draped meadows, it is not only a feast for the senses but a rare convergence of geology, botany, and serenity. A mountain both earthly and surreal, where color itself seems to bloom from stone. Rising from the outskirts of Chuxiongnu Autonomous Prefecture, Mount Sichuan is not among Yunnan's highest peaks, yet its unique topography and vivid palette make it one of its most visually arresting. The mountain's terrain is composed primarily of red sandstone, its surface sculpted over eons by wind and rain into dramatic shapes. Smooth ridges, cleft valleys, and cliff faces that catch and play with light like stained glass. When sunlight strikes at certain angles, the rock glows in hues of scarlet, rust, and burnt orange, transforming the mountain into what looks like a sleeping fire dragon coiled in green. This coloration isn't merely aesthetic, it's geological poetry. The red rocks are remnants of ancient sedimentary deposits, dating back millions of years to when the area was part of a vast inland sea. As water receded and time etched away at the exposed earth, iron-rich layers were oxidized, giving birth to the warm, bleeding tones that now define Mount Sichuan's bones. These rocks aren't just old, they are the exposed memory of the planet itself, caught mid-whisper. But it's not just the rock that makes Mount Sichuan so unforgettable, it's what grows on and around it. The lower slopes are wrapped in lush pine forests, their scent thick in the cool morning air. These pines, some of them centuries old, stand in noble silence, their dark green boughs dancing lightly with mountain breezes. Beneath their canopy, the earth is carpeted with moss, mushrooms, and fallen needles, absorbing footsteps in quiet welcome. The forest is alive with bird calls, woodpeckers tapping at trunks, thrushes warbling from hidden perches, and occasionally the flutter of a startled pheasant or partridge rushing through underbrush. Higher up, as the pines give way to open ridges and exposed rock terraces, the flora explodes into brilliant color. From early spring through late autumn, the mountain is a living canvas of wildflowers: lavender asters, flame-red lilies, golden cosmos, pale pink saxifrages, and delicate clusters of white and blue forget-me-nots. These aren't cultivated beds or ornamental displays. They are spontaneous celebrations of life, each flower nodding toward the sky as though answering an invisible call. The juxtaposition of soft petals against the harsh red stone creates a kind of natural theater, a contrast that heightens the beauty of both elements, the softness of life blooming defiantly from the permanence of rock. Trails wind their way across the mountain like delicate brushstrokes. Unlike some of China's more industrialized scenic spots, Mount Zishi retains a sense of intimacy. The paths are narrow and often shaded, with hand-built wooden bridges crossing small creeks and natural rock steps leading up through steep gullies. There are no cable cars here, no crowded temples or booming loudspeakers. Instead, you hear the wind threading through pine branches, the rush of a distant waterfall, and occasionally, the chant-like hum of cicadas blending into the quiet mountain hymn. Along the trail, there are several naturally formed lookouts, jutting promontories where hikers pause, breathe deeply, and let their eyes roam across the sweeping Yunnan highlands. From these vantage points, the landscape unfolds in layered waves: forested valleys, terraced farms, distant peaks hazed in blue, and the occasional flash of silver where a river cuts its way through the folds. And in the foreground, always, the vivid scarlet stone of Zishi itself, illuminated in ever-changing shades by passing clouds and shifting sun. Though sparsely populated, the mountain does carry echoes of human life, mostly in the form of small shrines, prayer flags, and solitary stone cairns left by pilgrims and wanderers. The Yi people, one of China's oldest ethnic minorities, have long called the surrounding region home, and traces of their culture are felt more than seen. Sometimes, a cloth charm will hang from a pine branch. Other times, a stone circle tucked between boulders will mark a ceremonial site, hidden from casual sight but alive with reverence. To the Yi, the mountains are sacred not because they are majestic, but because they are alive. Spirits dwell in trees, in springs, in the winds that twist through canyons. Mount Zishi, with its painterly stillness and blooming wildness, is seen as a bridge between the visible and invisible world. In springtime, the slopes come alive not only with flowers, but with butterflies, hundreds of species, from tiny white moths to massive swallowtails in iridescent blues and greens. They flit across the meadows like wandering pigments, adding motion to the mountain's palette. In early morning, the meadows are often wrapped in mist that creeps in like a ghostly tide, softening every edge until the world becomes a watercolor in motion. Then, as the sun rises and the mist dissolves, the colors intensify, and Mount Zishi becomes almost impossibly vivid, a waking dream soaked in light and fragrance. For those who stay overnight, there are a few modest guest houses at the foot of the mountain, run by local families who offer simple meals of rice, mushrooms, preserved vegetables, and fresh greens plucked from garden plots. The hospitality is warm, the food nourishing, and the air, always the air, cool, clean, scented with pine and wild mint. At night, if the skies are clear, stars will overhead in unbroken constellations, and the silence is so deep it seems to come from the mountain's very core. Unlike tourist magnets like Jade Dragon Snow Mountain or the famed peaks of the Shilin Stone Forest, Mount Zishi has remained largely untouched by mass tourism. This makes it all the more precious. It is a place for walkers, dreamers, poets, and seekers. It is where solitude becomes strength, and where silence teaches you how to listen again. Mount Zishi is unreal not because it shocks, but because it heals. Its beauty is gentle but persistent, layered in quiet complexity, like an old painting that reveals more with each glance. It is not only a mountain of color and contrast, but a sanctuary of stillness, where time seems to hold its breath and the world narrows to the sound of wind in the grass and the warmth of red rock beneath your hands. To hike, it is to be humbled. To rest on its slopes is to be restored. And to remember it afterward is to carry a living picture in your heart, one painted not with ink or oil, but with sun and stone and the wild, blooming grace of the earth itself. Mount Huanggang, Huanggangshan, is the mighty and mysterious pinnacle of the Wuyi Mountains, quietly reigning as the highest peak in East China at 2,158 meters above sea level. Hidden within the misty folds of Fujian province's lush interior, this mountain does not scream for attention with jagged drama or volcanic violence. Instead, it speaks in hushed tones, through dew-laden bamboo groves, the hush of cloud-draped cliffs, the rustle of ancient trees, and the secretive lives of rare creatures dwelling within one of China's most precious ecological sanctuaries. Huanggang is a living library of natural wonders, cultural echoes, and spiritual serenity. It is a mountain of hidden power, layered mystery, and unspoken magic, real and unreal in equal measure. Part of the famed Wui mountain range, which stretches like a vertebrae of green across the borderlands of Fujian and Jiangxi, Mount Huanggang stands tall among a series of rounded, forested summits, many of which are protected under the Wui Mountain UNESCO World Heritage Site designation. While the lower areas of the Wui Range, especially near the Nine Bend River, have long been known for their dramatic dancia landforms, vertical cliffs, and tea cultivation, Huanggang occupies a more secluded, primal corner of this vast green empire. It is less frequented by casual tourists, but deeply revered by scientists, hikers, and Taoist pilgrims alike. The climb up Mount Huanggang is an immersive journey through layers of biodiversity and time. The ascent begins in dense subtropical forests, humid and echoing with birdsong and the buzz of hidden insects. Towering evergreens rise alongside groves of camphor, sweet osmanthus, and broadleaf trees, their leaves slick with mountain mist. Ferns crowd the understory, and moss carpets the stones. The mountains forests, considered one of the most biologically diverse in all of China, are home to over 2,500 species of plants and countless rare animals. Here roam the elusive South China tiger, rarely seen but still part of local legend, as well as the Chinese giant salamander, masked palm civets, serows, and even black muntjacs with their strange vampire-like fangs. As you climb higher, the trees begin to change. Deciduous species give way to stunted mountain pines and rhododendron groves, twisted and dwarfed by altitude and wind. During spring, these slopes explode into color: pale pink, purple, white, and crimson blossoms blooming all at once in a chaotic celebration of life. Fog flows in bands across the ridgelines, tangling around the trees and painting the entire landscape with a kind of monochrome mystery. Hikers often report walking in silence for hours, enveloped in mist, with no sound but their breath and the occasional drop of condensation falling from the canopy. In these moments, the world feels narrowed to footsteps and breath. It feels holy. Reaching the summit of Mount Huanggang is not an act of conquest but communion. The peak itself is not sharp or exposed like many higher altitude mountains. Instead, it is wide and forested, its crown often lost in cloud, its surface layered with lichens and centuries of fallen leaves. There is no dramatic rock face to hang off, no summit cross or gaudy structure, just a simple stone marker, a quiet testament to being the highest point in East China, standing alone amid wind, mist, and sky. From here, on a clear day, one can see far beyond the Wui Range, across the deep forest valleys and winding rivers, into the softer lands of Fujian stretching toward the coast. More often, however, the view is inward. Fog erases the horizon and leaves only a quiet circle of visibility, creating a kind of natural meditation chamber. You are alone, and yet deeply connected, to the earth, to the breath, to the immensity around you. But Mount Huanggang is not just a biological treasure or a scenic ascent, it is steeped in centuries of cultural significance. The Wui Mountains have long been associated with Taoist and Confucian traditions, with sages and alchemists seeking enlightenment in their caves and forests. Though the more well-known sacred sites and Taoist temples are located in the lower parts of the Wui Range, particularly around Qianyu Peak and the Nine Bend River, Huanggang too has long been revered as a place of power, purity, and mystery. The isolation of its upper slopes has made it ideal for solitary cultivation, and tales of hermits meditating in stone huts near its summit have persisted through dynasties. The Taoist concept of immortality, intimately tied to nature and the balance of yin and yang, finds ideal resonance here. The dense life of the forest, the clarity of the mountain air, the flowing water and ever-changing mists, these elements have made Mount Huanggang a kind of natural temple. Even today, one might come across a lone Taoist practitioner in flowing robes tending a fire or collecting medicinal herbs along forgotten trails, continuing a tradition that predates even written history. The mountain is also intricately linked to the development of Wui tea culture. The entire region is world famous for its rock oolong teas, particularly Die Hong Pao, Shui Xian, and Ru Gui. and the mountain's ecosystem contributes to this unique terroir. The rainfall, soil composition, humidity, and temperature fluctuations all enhance the complexity of the tea grown on and around the slopes. Local tea farmers, whose families have lived in this land for generations, often refer to Mount Huanggang with reverence. They see it not just as a backdrop to their work, but as a living guardian whose breath infuses their leaves with vitality. For conservationists and ecologists, Mount Huanggang is a frontier of study and protection. It sits at a delicate climatic intersection, subtropical lowlands giving way to temperate highlands, and as such, it supports a wide range of endangered and endemic species. Many research expeditions have documented species here found nowhere else on Earth. Scientists, hikers, and photographers who visit the mountain today are often humbled not by what they see immediately, but by what remains unseen, hidden beneath foliage or buried in the mountain's geological strata. Ancient fossils, rare orchids, elusive mammals, and untouched springs whose water has filtered through stone for centuries. Because of its remote location, access to Mount Huanggang requires time and intention. It is not a place you visit by accident. From the city of Huaishan, the journey includes winding roads, local transport, and hours of hiking. But every step is a passage deeper into the unreal, a layered unfolding of the Earth's subtleties. The effort required becomes part of the reward, stripping away noise and haste until you meet the mountain not as a traveler or a tourist, but as a guest stepping into something sacred. Mount Huanggang is unreal not because it astonishes in flashes, but because it lingers. It is a slow revelation, a place whose beauty seeps into you like morning fog through pine needles. It changes shape with every hour, every season, every angle of light. It is ancient without being austere, wild without being cruel, alive in a way that invites listening rather than conquering. To stand at its summit, to walk its trails, to drink the mountain air and hear nothing but the rhythm of wind and breath, that is not just travel. That is transformation. Mount Luoxiao, is not a single peak, but a vast, flowing spine of mountains that stretches between the provinces of Hunan and Jiangxi like an ancient vertebra of mist and memory. This long and winding range, veiled more often than not in cloud and soft rain, is a living mosaic of tangled forest, deep rivers, and villages so old they seem to have grown from the very earth. Here, the land breathes in silence and slow time. Here, the unreal is not found in spectacle, but in the quiet poetry of continuity, the way water, tree, stone, and story have coexisted for millennia, undisturbed and unpretentious. The Luoxiao Mountains are relatively unknown on the global stage, overshadowed by flashier ranges like the Himalayas or the karst peaks of Guilin. But what they lack in fame, they make up for in complexity and soul. These mountains stretch for over 300 kilometers in a roughly northeast-southwest direction, forming the natural border between the Xiong River Basin in Hunan and the Gan River Basin in Jiangxi. Their highest point is Mount Huanggang, already explored in detail, but the spirit of Luoxiao is not limited to altitude. It is spread across its countless forested ridges, deep-cut valleys, and mist-laced river gorges. It is in the quiet, and in the continuity. Rain defines this place. The Luoxiao Mountains are soaked in a humid subtropical climate, and the moist air that rises from the valleys condenses as it climbs the ridges, blanketing the slopes in an ever-present cloud veil. This creates one of China's richest ecological zones, where moss grows thick on rocks, lichen paints the trunks of ancient trees, and ferns wave like feathered fans from every slope. The forest canopy is dense and varied. Oak, fir, pine, maple, camphor, and bamboo weave together in a green tapestry so thick that in some places, sunlight barely touches the ground even at noon. Walking through these woods is like moving through a world just barely remembered, where every tree seems older than a dynasty and every trail whispers with ancient footsteps. Beneath this canopy, rivers are born. Hundreds of streams trickle from mountain springs and converge into fast-moving creeks, then swell into winding rivers that carve their way through narrow valleys. The rivers here are lifelines and storytellers. They have eroded canyons, fed rice paddies, shaped legends, and reflected the moonlight of countless generations. In some stretches, the water runs jade green, clear and cold. In others, it disappears beneath thick vegetation, only to reappear miles downstream in sudden waterfalls or tranquil pools. These waterways are often so pristine that fish can be seen darting below the surface, and local herders still guide water buffalo to drink from them with simple wooden staffs. What makes the Luoxiao Mountains truly unreal, however, are the human stories woven through their geography. Unlike remote and uninhabited ranges, Luoxiao is home to a rich patchwork of traditional villages that sit quietly on its lower slopes and hidden valleys. Many of these are centuries old, their architecture untouched by the brutal hand of modernity. Homes here are made of timber, clay, and stone, with sloped roofs tiled in dark grey or black, weathered beautifully by generations of rain. Stone pathways thread between the houses, past shrines, small family temples, and wells that have served entire communities for lifetimes. In villages like Shuidong, Xiangxi, and Hengxie, time seems reluctant to move. Elderly men still wear blue cotton jackets, women hang corn from the rafters to dry in the wind, and communal fires crackle in the cool morning mist. Local dialects, some of them nearly extinct, are spoken in daily conversation. Storytelling, herbal medicine, and seasonal festivals are not relics here, they are life. Children chase chickens down the alleyways. Farmers bend over terraces that climb the mountains like green staircases to heaven. In spring and summer, every patch of cultivable land erupts in vegetables and grains. In fall, golden rice fields shimmer like gold leaf pressed into the mountain skin. Many of these villages have deep ties to ancient Chinese philosophies. The Luoxiao region is considered a cradle of Neo-Confucianism, and several renowned scholars, including Zhu Xi, one of the most influential Confucian thinkers, walked these mountains in the 12th century, finding in their quiet strength the perfect setting for meditation and the refinement of thought. Temples, academies, and libraries once nestled into the hills served as sanctuaries for learning and spiritual cultivation. Some of them have crumbled into ruins, taken back by vines and forest. Others still stand, their wooden beams groaning with age, incense curling beneath hand-carved eaves, and students reciting texts in tones unchanged for centuries. But Luoxiao has also known rebellion. The region's hidden valleys and forest cover made it a natural refuge for outlaws, rebels, and freedom fighters. During the early 20th century, it became a hotbed for revolutionary activity and guerrilla resistance. Hidden among the trees are now forgotten caves and stone shelters where the hunted once found rest, and the determined made plans for futures shaped not by imperial decree or colonial influence, but by dreams whispered over flickering fires. To walk here is to feel the pulse of history underfoot, not in monuments or museums, but in the land itself. The Luoxiao Mountains also hold spiritual reverence for many Taoist practitioners. Though less adorned with grand temples than the Wudang or Qingcheng ranges, Luoxiao has its own quiet sacredness. Taoist hermits once dwelled in the deeper reaches of the forest, meditating in caves, subsisting on herbs and spring water, living in harmony with the rhythms of the mountain. Even now, pilgrims come to seek these hidden paths, to leave offerings at mossy shrines, or to simply sit beneath ancient trees and listen, not to sermons or chants, but to the mountain's own language. In spring, wild azaleas and mountain camellias set the ridges ablaze with soft color. In summer, fireflies dance along streambanks, lighting the night with silent sparks. Autumn brings red maples and the scent of wood smoke curling through the valleys. And in winter, the mountain dons a cloak of mist and frost, the trees rimmed with silver, the rivers slowed, the forest hushed beneath the weight of cold air and 1,000 dreams. Every season paints Luoxiao differently, but always with the brush of subtlety and breath. For those who venture here, there are no grand hotels or cable cars. There are footpaths, stone bridges, and time. Time to walk, time to listen, time to see what's always been waiting, soft, persistent, enduring. Mount Luoxiao is unreal in the truest way. It slips beneath your skin, not with spectacle, but with stillness. It is a mountain not of ascent, but of immersion. Not of domination, but of deep belonging. To visit Mount Luoxiao is not to escape the world, it is to return to a part of it long forgotten. It is to rediscover the rhythm of water over stone, wind through trees, and the hush of old stories whispered down green paths. It is to remember that wonder does not always arrive with noise. Sometimes, it is a quiet mountain breathing clouds. Mount Haba, Habashan, is a sentinel of solitude and strength that rises with quiet majesty on the eastern flank of the world-renowned Tiger Leaping Gorge in Yunnan province. Often overshadowed by its towering neighbor, the glaciated Yulong Snow Mountain to the east, Mount Haba holds its own mystique, standing as both a physical challenge and a spiritual beacon for trekkers, botanists, and cultural seekers. Here, raw geology meets sacred mythology. alpine meadows spill into roaring ravines, and every trail feels like a pilgrimage through layers of earth, sky, and ancient memory. At 5,396 meters above sea level, Mount Haba is no modest hill. It is a colossal pyramid of stone, snow, and sky, its peak perpetually dusted with frost, even as wildflowers bloom below. Yet despite its height, it is remarkably approachable for those with determination. It is one of the few 5,000-meter peaks in China that can be climbed without technical mountaineering equipment, making it a rare opportunity for amateur adventurers to breach the roof of the world without ropes and ice axes. Just willpower, respect for altitude, and reverence for the mountain's rhythms. But Haba's story doesn't begin at the summit. It begins in the shadowy depths of the Tiger Leaping Gorge, where the Jinsha River, a young Yangtze, carves a violent path between Haba and Yulong Snow Mountain, its turquoise waters thundering between sheer cliffs over 3,000 meters deep. This gorge, one of the deepest in the world, forms the dramatic theater in which Haba rises. From certain vantage points, Mount Haba appears not only massive, but otherworldly, a wall of green and white rising abruptly from the mists of the canyon, its flanks furrowed with ancient glacial valleys and cloaked in rolling clouds. The trek up Mount Haba begins gently, in terraced fields and Nashi villages near the town of Haba, where herders guide yaks through meadows and the air is filled with the scent of wood smoke and pine. This lower zone, between 2,000 and 3,000 meters, is a mosaic of cultivated land, rhododendron groves, and dense conifer forests. The biodiversity here is astounding. Yunnan itself is one of the richest botanical regions on Earth, and Mount Haba is its living vault. Botanists have recorded thousands of plant species on its slopes, from medicinal herbs used in traditional Chinese medicine to orchids, magnolias, and azaleas of breathtaking rarity. Birds of bright plumage flit between the trees, and if one is lucky, the bark of a barking deer or even a fleeting snow leopard might grace the air with wild wonder. As trekkers ascend, the trail grows steeper, the air thinner, and the landscape more austere. The trees thin out, replaced by alpine shrublands and grassy plateaus. In spring and summer, these meadows are ablaze with color: yellow potentilla, blue poppies, pink primroses, and star-shaped gentians forming carpets of improbable brilliance against the gray of scree slopes and the white of distant snow. This is also the land of the yak. Herds graze freely in high pastures, bells clinking softly, their thick coats moving like ink against the sky. Climbers aiming for the summit often camp at base camp around 4,200 meters, a cold, windy outpost that lies in the final vegetation zone before the mountain ascends into its icy crown. The view here is already staggering: vast expanses of ridgelines, the gorge far below coiling like a silver serpent, and across the chasm, the monstrous flanks of Yulong Snow Mountain catching the last golden light of day. Night at base camp is an experience unto itself. Stars burn with unnatural clarity, the Milky Way hangs like a frozen waterfall across the heavens, and silence reigns, broken only by the cracking of distant ice or the rush of wind funneled through unseen crevices. The summit push is an ordeal, a grueling 6 to 10-hour round trip over scree, snow, and cold wind. The altitude hits hard, and every step becomes deliberate. But as climbers near the top, the effort becomes transcendent. The final ridge narrows, the sky widens, and suddenly the world drops away on all sides. At the peak, prayer flags flutter in the wind, wrapped around a cairn where climbers leave offerings and quiet wishes. From this vantage point, the roof of Yunnan unfolds in every direction: gorge, river, forest, and snow stretching into the pale horizon. What makes Haba unreal is not just its beauty or its climbability, but its place in the spiritual geography of the region. To the Nashi people and other local ethnic groups, Haba is not merely a mountain, it is a sacred presence. Its name is said to derive from the Nashi language, meaning golden flower, a reference perhaps to the wild blooms found along its ridges or the shimmering light it reflects at sunrise and sunset. Local myths often pair Haba with Yulong Snow Mountain in an eternal standoff across the gorge, two celestial beings frozen in time, once lovers, now divided by the roaring Jinsha River. The river, in turn, becomes the dynamic force between them: rage, movement, change, while the mountains embody permanence, stillness, and longing. In these stories, Haba is often seen as the gentler of the two, a nurturing mountain, green and full of life, while Yulong is fierce and remote. Yet both are venerated, and offerings are made to them during seasonal festivals, especially in spring, when the people of the valley ask for blessings of rain, harvest, and protection. Culturally, the area around Mount Haba is a melting pot. The Naxi, Yi, Bai, and Tibetan peoples have coexisted here for generations, each bringing their own songs, stories, and practices. Trekkers moving through the villages near Haba will often hear flutes echoing at dusk, see women in traditional blue tunics carrying baskets of herbs, and children herding goats along stone paths worn smooth by centuries of footsteps. In these moments, the journey becomes not just vertical, but temporal, a passage through layers of human history that ripple out from the mountain like sound waves. Ecologically, Mount Haba serves as a buffer zone to the Three Parallel Rivers region, one of the most important biodiversity hotspots on the planet. Its unique climate and geography, ranging from subtropical valleys to alpine tundra, create microhabitats for plants and animals that exist nowhere else. And while it has attracted more visitors in recent years, it has also benefited from conservation efforts that seek to preserve its fragile balance. Guides, many of whom are locals, now emphasize sustainable practices, and trekking routes are maintained with minimal ecological disturbance. Mount Haba is unreal because it defies expectations. It is not as famous as Everest or as visually explosive as Zhangjiajie, but it offers something deeper: accessibility without sacrifice, solitude without danger, and majesty without arrogance. It welcomes without softening its edges. It challenges without punishing. And it rewards not with glory, but with humility. To stand on Haba's summit is not just to conquer a peak, it is to glimpse how Earth can speak in silences, how clouds can become companions, and how wildness can feel like home. It is a reminder that between thunder and prayer, between sky and stone, there lies a world that asks only for reverence and a pair of willing feet. This video is for educational or entertainment purposes only, and information provided in the video may be incorrect. If you enjoyed the video, consider subscribing to the channel and like the video.